OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, bang on 7:30 this morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Owen with you in studio all the way through until 10. Also with us this morning is Nathan Murphy. Nathan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, everybody.
So I want to start a little bit with where we were yesterday in the show. We had Vinnie Perth in studio talking about the League of Ireland game, and he was kind of surprised at the reaction that there had been to the Rovers game because of the goal in the past from Jack Byrne. He was kind of making the point that the rest of the game was grand, and you know, off air afterwards we were kind of having the conversation that actually that's fine. In the era of social media, 2 or 3 highlights in a game is kind of all you need for everybody to go, oh, I want to go to this thing.
Yeah, I think for the league and getting people interested and involved and excited about it, a Jack Byrne pulling off a goal like that in the past like that does get people thinking, should I go to Tala on a Friday night? It doesn't maybe reflect the quality of the game, but actually I thought the game was a pretty entertaining game. Drogheda are a good side. They get the ball down, they pass it around, and Rovers sort of did what Rovers do, which is they grounded out, they had a lot of possession, and Jack Byrne was good, but I think Jack, as he admitted himself in the interview, has a long way to go. He gave the ball away quite a bit, but he's always trying to do something. He's almost trying to do too much. He's trying to force the issue constantly. He's always looking for that killer pass, perhaps at times when it's not really on. But it does feel as though you can get very quickly now all the exciting things that happen, whether it is a sprinkler going off. It's a talking point. It's something that happened. I don't see it as this massive embarrassment to the league.
I don't either.
Crazy things happen everywhere.
Yeah. But I think if you're involved in the league, you're pretty sensitive about that kind of stuff, because it is, like, obviously not great, but like it happens in all over the world.
When they were parading the Club World Cup at Chelsea last week, I mean, the lads got sprinkled. Chilwell and was it Reece James who brought the Club World Cup onto the pitch? That is one thing that happens everywhere. The wheelbarrow just made it funnier. Like,
that was it. Yeah.
And, like, I don't think people were laughing at the league.
It turned it into high art.
Yeah.
Well, there was that hashtag greatest league in the world, which every time something would go wrong was thrown up, and it would be thrown up a lot over the course of the season.
But is that not actually endearing? It's like we're a self-reflexive bunch of fans who really like this thing that everybody shits on, but shouldn't, because actually it's kind of enjoyable and grassrootsy.
I think it's a frustration that a lot of people don't take the league seriously because of incidents like that. Rightly or wrongly. So I think that's where the frustration and the protectionism is around clips like that going up and going viral, because while League of Ireland fans and people who watch a lot of football would go, fine. Those who aren't that interested, who might, the sort of floating voter, are looking going, geez, this is amateur hour. Whereas a lot of people have their minds made up about the League of Ireland.
I think a lot of people had their minds made up about the League of Ireland. I think things have changed over the last number of years. I think that you trace it back to Michael O'Neill and that Rovers run, and from then to here, there's been a journey that a lot of Irish football fans have gone on and gone, well, actually, you know what? I mean, look at this. Okay, I'm okay. All right, now I'm watching. Like, that's how it happens, and it's going to be a drip, 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 and then overnight success.
Hopefully. What does an overnight success look like, though? Because a lot of the teams, unfortunately, and clubs aren't in a position to take advantage of overnight success. So,
obviously, there's no such thing as an overnight success. Like, that's the point. Luton Town were out of the league, and now they're on the verge of going back to the Premier League. It took 14 years for them. That's an overnight success. But everybody is saying, because they're in the Cup tonight, it's like, oh, that came out of nowhere. But it didn't. It came out of hard decisions made 14, 15 years ago by ownership and community planning and reaching out and having a vision and sticking with the vision through thick and thin. That's like overnight success is obviously what the general perception will be, is like that came out of nowhere, but actually the building blocks are here now. Sorry, just to cut across you there.
That's fine. I think there's good things been done. I'd say everybody's wary of false dawns that, when Dundalk and Cork had a proper rivalry going, it felt like the league was on the cusp of something, and then Cork just disappeared and find themselves down in the first division. Obviously, Dundalk has been a complete shit show for the last couple of years as well. Maybe they can get things back together, but both of those juggernauts have fallen away. And it did feel, if you think the last game out in Tala was the Jordan Flores goal, Jack Byrne winner game, packed house, it felt at that stage, just pre-COVID, that it was on the verge of something. And maybe now it can get back there quickly. When you look at the season ticket sales for all of the Dublin clubs are pretty much at record levels. And I think there is a real connection between what happens with the Irish senior team now and an understanding that while you may not see football quite of the quality that you will see in the Premier League, you don't need to. That actually you can go to any of these matches and you'll see an entertaining game. By and large, the football is decent. You'll see a bad game, but you'll see a crap game in the Premier League. Watch Liverpool and Manchester United over the years. It's never usually the most exciting game of the season. So at times, people's expectations can be too high. They're looking for faults constantly. I thought Shamrock Rovers' Drogheda game on Monday night was one of the more entertaining games I've been at recently. Plenty of chances, good football, good pace to it, bit of quality in Jack Byrne and Graham Burke. And people are getting a ticket there, I'd say, for 15, 17 quid. I don't think you can complain too much about that.
I'd agree with you, and I think that if you want to compare it to, say, what you're getting in the Premier League, for example, I know that there is a title race on and maybe Liverpool will be Premier League champions, but if we kind of cling to this notion that existed a month ago of Manchester City being the standard bearers right now in the Premier League, I mean, there is definitely a theme out there that they aren't overly exciting to watch because they are so good that we've almost got to this point where it's like this perfectionism actually isn't as entertaining as it once was. Whereas if you put them up against teams of a similar standard, which invariably tends to be Liverpool, and you've got opportunities and you've got chances and you're not quite sure which way the game is going to go, and that is the key point of it. A football game that has chances and that you don't know which way it's going to go, that draws people in, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a 30 million euro winger who is creating the opportunities, as long as there are opportunities.
Jeopardy, uncertainty of outcome.
Exactly, that's it. That's what you want, and every league in the world can produce that. And it's just about, I guess, accessing the experience that you have when you're a match scorer or as a match viewer at home that kind of takes that to the next level.
And a title race, that's what it needs this season, and that's why that goal for Derry feels important for the league on Friday night, because if Rovers had won that, they would have been 5 points clear of Derry. Derry dropped points again on Monday. And that's sort of what Shamrock Rovers did last season, particularly in around April. They scored an insane amount of late goals, grind out results, and next thing you find yourself 10 points clear. And you've 2/3 of the season left to go.
Yeah.
And everybody knows the title race is done. So why are you dragging yourself out on a Friday night or a Monday night to go to a match? Whereas I think now, if that the other teams can stay in touch, and obviously, Derry do drop points. Pats haven't beaten Shelburne on the opening night. Suddenly you fall back again. That there is an opportunity for Rovers to just keep winning their games and everyone else beats everybody else.
And look, that probably will happen. Rovers are further down the line than most other teams, and maybe the injection of money into Derry is going to allow them to catch up sooner rather than later. And that's why the other narratives in the league are very important. That's why Duffer and his little sprinkling of stardust is hugely important, and hit their battle against relegation. Hopefully they don't just become a mid-table team 6 weeks in and that's it. There's no jeopardy as well. But him fighting against relegation is going to be one of the great Irish sports stories of 2022. I do want to just broaden this out a little bit, because obviously if you just woke up and you don't know what happened last night, Antonio Conte pulled his trick 10 days ago after they got beaten by Burnley, who are also beaten last night in the league by Leicester. What the hell? But anyway, and then last night they went out to Middlesbrough in the Cup. It's like, what? This isn't supposed to happen. They turned a corner.
Yeah, I saw a quote tweet online this morning.
Tweet? Hey, you might have invented that.
Yeah, good man.
And it was in reaction to Tottenham last night, and it was, "I'm done with this team," and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Conte!" And it was actually just a phoner into TalkSport. But I could fully have believed that if Conte was like, "I'm done with this team," I would have fully believed it. But actually, I think it's Football.London have done a full transcript of his quotes, and I went through them with a tooth comb, and there was no sense of Antonio Conte being like, "I'm done with this team," or maybe I'm not a good manager this week. So maybe he just welcomes the idea of fighting on one front at this point, although he played a pretty strong team.
I played pretty much a full-strength team out there last night. Harry Kane is playing, Young Min Son is playing. They had chances. Matt Doherty missed a really good opportunity, went around the keeper at one stage and should have just pulled it across to Young Min Son and said smashes it over the bar. Doherty played all right, actually. But this level of inconsistency, some of it has to land at the manager's door. It's too easy, and all the analysis is it's Spursy. This is what Spurs are.
It is Spursy, though. It's mad. It's mad. It's
Maurizio Pochettino turned them into something else. Antonio Conte, we all felt when he went in there, they were getting somehow one of that real top tier of managers in world football. And instead of fixing this, he's just looking around constantly going, Spursy, lads. This is very Spursy.
Well,
Your job is to change that.
It is, but he's only had 8 weeks. Like, it's hard in a very short period of time to come in and fix things. Like, most of the long-term great successes have been built on a couple of seasons of ridding the club of whatever cancers were in it. If you think back to Ferguson, like, no manager's ever going to get the same amount of time that Ferguson had, right? And I'm not suggesting that Antonio Conte should, because his Spurs team are actually better than the Man United team that Ferguson inherited. But it took him absolutely ages. Like, ages and ages and ages and ages. And it's going to take Conte quite a long time if Spurs believe that they're capable of being a tier 1 footballing entity, right? Like, so I don't know. The constant referendum that he has introduced after that early period on his future, that's weird, because he knew what the situation was. He knew what the playing stock was like. He'd already spoken to the club 6 months ago. It doesn't make any sense that, like, managers now seem to exist in an accelerated culture where they want to make decisions quickly, get in, see, make the decision, move on, and try and emerge unscathed.
Well, the best case scenario was he would come in, they would sign 4 or 5 players. But again, if they were going to sign Dusan Vlahovic, a deal like that surely is already underway before or the day he arrives. If that's a key signing for him, that's got to start happening quickly. It can't have been a shock to him that at the end of the transfer window, the only 2 players they ended up signing were the 2 guys coming in from Juventus, and that they had let 4 players go who he never really seemed bothered about any of them. Like, that cannot have come as this massive shock and a betrayal by Daniel Levy. That is how Daniel Levy has always worked. So for him to go in and somehow think that Tottenham is going to magically change is a bit of a lack of due diligence, which...
Or else we're misreading all the stuff that he's saying, and he actually... It's just his mode of speaking, and that he will be there for the long haul, and the notion that he's got to walk out for whatever reason is nonsense. This is all just that's part of the carnival. I don't know if I paid enough attention at Chelsea, but maybe because things went well, this didn't happen. Maybe this...
It was a very bad start, and then it got good very quickly because he changed formation. But that happened within, like, 6-7 games, of the season. So, like...
But it brings a level of uncertainty. So I think he's misplaying his hand there, because, as you were saying, after every single match, the first thing you're waiting for last night is, what's Antonio Conte going to do? Like, is he actually going to resign? Is he going to resign because he was humiliated last night by Middlesbrough?
Yeah, he's got nowhere left to go.
That drags on, like that line of, there's one club in crisis all the time. You just don't want to be that club. Like, he is ensuring that Tottenham are that club week on week.
Well, luckily Manchester United have the current franchise on that. Their obviously press conference wasn't it? It was was it a fan forum? Was that where they were all talking?
Yeah.
Where the explanation of what Darren Fletcher's role was after Ralph Rangnick was like, I don't know what he does. He didn't quite say he doesn't know what he does, but he's like, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. And then Fletcher was like, oh, when the transition happened between the 2 coaching staffs, I kind of came in and started being on the training ground. It's like, when you listen and you just take everybody's comments in, it doesn't seem to make that much sense. So Fletcher said, my job is to get the pathway for young players to come through and make it to the first team. It's working very well at the moment. Look at Elanga. Right, okay, fair enough. Now, Elanga's obviously been at Manchester United since he was 12, right? Mm. So, how long is Fletcher in the role? 18 months? Because he was talking about doing podcasts 2 years ago, right? So, like, at the start of COVID. So it's not that long. He can't really claim that much credit for Elanga, can he?
It's hard to know who's actually brought him through, and I think that there's also a sense that, like, somebody said stop on Elanga going out on loan, obviously.
Yeah. And Rangnick claimed credit for it.
Just about to say that in that press conference last week after he spoke, after he scored last week, that it was him that spotted this guy who was about to be let go and told him to stop. So I think everybody, whenever anything goes right at Manchester United, likes to claim credit for it. And, like, Richard Arnold yesterday, I think if you're coming to this thing new and you don't know Manchester United's form over the last couple of years, you'd be pretty excited about where Manchester United are going to go, because Richard Arnold's a bit like Ed Woodward, can talk a good game and can guess, beef up hopes quite nicely over the next little while. Like he's saying that he is implementing a strategy to win, and he says everyone associated with Manchester United should have belief in the opportunities that lie ahead for us, both on the pitch and in the way we engage and serve our fans. And he says we have a clear vision, and we are implementing a strategy to win with an empowered leadership team to drive that forward. So it'd be interesting to see if that clear vision manifests itself.
Did the debt figure get reported widely?
It did.
An extra 50 million up to 500 million. Doesn't seem to be an issue, although the stadium is crumbling. They've obviously had to cut ties with Aeroflot. The team is not performing. Things could get into a tailspin pretty quickly for Manchester United if things went bad, if there was, say, a global shock coming. So I think it's not all certain. And their wage bill went up 19 million.
Yeah, so just from some of the writing done on it yesterday, their second quarter results for fiscal 2022 showed the club paid £10 million in exceptional items, which included compensation to Solskjaer and also other members of the coaching staff. And then that figure also took into account a revaluation of the Football League pension scheme deficit. And then the results showed an operating profit of £5.4 million for the quarter, with revenue up to £185 million, up 7.3%. But then it gets to your figure there. The net debt has increased by 8.6%. Player wages were up 19.6%.
Oh, 19.6%, not 19 million. I was thinking
to £97.7 million. So that's a constant ticking along.
Cristiano Ronaldo shaped increase there.
Yeah, I mean they did give that new contract to Henderson as well. It's like you get good value for spending $5 million on your sub goalkeeper per annum. Liverpool's is 300 grand. Not that it's fair to compare and contrast.
Yeah, but I think if you are running your business properly, you can sell Dean Henderson, who is much sought after in the summer, for 25-30 million.
Last summer.
Contract is worthwhile.
Last summer.
Well, last summer or this summer coming.
Will he still get that amount? Because it's a very much a what have you done for me lately league. Are you going to spend 20 million on this? Maybe you are, because it seems to have worked for Villa, and I'd like to have seen him play a year. If he'd gone on loan this year and had a year similar to the year he had at Sheffield United. Anyway, sorry, all of this is kind of by the by. The other big story overnight, and I'll get to that in just a moment, but a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. At 7:47, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Special treat for us all this morning. Tommy Walsh at 8:10. Virtual Insanity with John Duggan at 8:45. It's a double weekend tournament. Sports pages at 9, Phil Egan's football at 9, and Eric Donovan in very reflective mood after his defeat at the weekend, potentially his last fight. So we'll see. You can listen in on that from 9:30 this morning. Now, the other big story overnight is that the London Times are reporting that Abramovich might be ready to sell Chelsea, that he has in the past refused to sell, turned down offers around the 2 billion mark, and they're saying that now all bets are off. There's a Labour MP who was part of the select committee on Russia who says that Abramovich is selling off his property assets in London. He's got a load of property assets. There's the New York Post also did this thing yesterday where the Upper East Side, the Russian oligarchs own a large portion of the Upper East Side. 3 or 4 buildings in a row. I think Abramovich had numbers 73, 74 and 75 on the same street. It's not like a 2-story, 2 up, 2 down type thing. It's like it's big. So there's a lot of money tied up in that, and probably pretty easy to sell if you need cash in a hurry. Thomas Tuchel obviously snapped yesterday in the press conference, and it felt like he'd been asked the same question repeatedly, but was it only twice?
I think so. I think it was early in the press conference anyway. It was maybe his second time being asked about it in the press conference.
Yeah, I understand Tuchel. The written quotes are actually they're more reflective than the video, and it's hard to shake the video where it's like, what are you doing asking me this question? I'm a football manager. Whereas the reflective quotes were like, everybody has this in the back of their head since the war started. Everybody is distracted by it. Of course we are. I'm going about my job. Like, I presume you are going about your job, slightly distracted by this too. But he was asked about Abramovich, and Abramovich is the most important person at Chelsea. Like, he was on the pitch with the World Club Championship in Abu Dhabi just a couple of weeks ago with the trophy. He has put all the money in that has transformed Chelsea from Spurs to one of the top 4 biggest clubs and most successful clubs in English football. And, you know, his rationale and his reason behind that is fairly evident. Like, it's fairly obvious why it's important, if you're an oligarch, to have some kind of financial instrument like Chelsea to, you know, be able to put money into, and then also to use it as something to kind of to exist in the world. And
he's got the biggest bolt in the world, so
yeah,
having the European champions, the World Club Cup winners, even among the oligarchs, it's a bit of a prize.
It seems to matter, but I think it also gave him a kind of power and kudos in polite English society for a while, up until they refused his visa, and then obviously he seems to have recalibrated his desires. And then there was the stuff last week. It's like, oh, he's not involved in politics. And then there was the other stuff. It's like, oh no, he's trying to broker peace. Like, and then it's, oh, I'm going to hand it over to my charity. And the charity are like, hang on a second, what? I'm not sure about this. So now the story comes out that he's interested in selling, and it makes perfect sense. But you do have to think that if English football, and if football generally, isn't looking at what's going on with Abramovich and thinking, this isn't good, does the contagion stop at Abramovich? Is he the only owner that anybody has a problem with? Because it's clearly not. Like, allowing football to become the playthings of billionaires was great for the fans in a fantasy football kind of way, in that it was like, oh, I get the best players in my team, and the quality of the football that I see improves. But in the long run, it completely devalues the experience of being a fan of that club, because you're now a plaything for billionaires, and you're now really almost a victim of your supporterhood. Was it Johnny Lew pointing out that as soon as you start liking a team, the team looks at you and places a numerical money value on you to try and exploit? Is that the point of football? Maybe it is. Maybe that is maybe the only reason we do anything is so that we can be exploited for our money. Maybe that's exactly why the world exists. I don't know. Maybe that was all of humanity was all coming to this point where you're worth X euros to whoever is watching, you're watching the TV, and you're like sitting there on your couch going, and there's like a little money figure over your head magically going up and down depending on which button you press.
Like, I mean, if the question is what should football stand for, it obviously shouldn't be that. But the reality is, this is where we are, and I mean, this has come up at various times over the last couple of years, when we kind of wonder to ourselves, how far will football actually push the boat out? And I think all we've seen over the last week is that a line in the sand has been drawn, and we now know that your owner being associated with the invasion of a democratic country in Europe, which is an important point here, in Europe, is the line in the sand. Everything before that line in the sand, that includes bombing Yemen, is absolutely fine in the world of football, because that is exactly what's happened here. And that even goes among some of the good owners in the Premier League, who voted pretty close to unanimously to allow Saudi Arabia into the league, to allow that money to come into the league. And I think the answer to your question is football all about the value that you place on each consumer? I think the answer to that question is blatantly yes. It absolutely is. That is what football is all about. That is what Premier League football is all about. There is no argument that you can make to convince anybody otherwise.
Okay, and fair enough, then that's grand. But like, what an enjoyable thing it is to be a part of this. Manchester City obviously is effectively owned by the UAE, right? They own Mumbai City, Melbourne City, New York City, Manchester City, effectively owned by the Abu Dhabi United Group for Development and Investment. So it's as clear that that's a state owning that club as it is that Saudi Arabia own Newcastle. Abu Dhabi abstained in the vote at the UN. Like, what's the difference between them and Abramovich, and what's the difference? What is the difference really? Like, when it comes down to it, and you tease it all out, there's no real difference. These are all being bought for political reasons, and I don't think you can kind of go as far as saying, well, like, ultimately, I guess I think there's an opportunity here, right? We keep getting told you can't print money, and then the pandemic comes along and money gets printed. You can't give people a a universal wage. It would be wrong. It would be moral hazard. But then the pandemic comes along and everybody got a universal wage because nobody could go to work. And the world didn't fall apart. There's a bit of debt, but they're going to just write it off over a period of time because that's what happens. You can do whatever you want if you want to. And now they're talking about seizing the assets of the oligarchs. We're just going to take that stuff that you have because you're connected in some way to Putin. So if you can do that, why can't you just seize the football clubs and insist that all football clubs have a fan ownership scheme like they do in Germany, where 51% of the club is owned by the fans? Like, just do it. Just decide this. Here's our opportunity to take football back from the hands of the billionaires and the countries, because actually we realise now with Abramovich it's completely wrong. The scales have fallen from our eyes. It took the invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin for the scales to fall from the eyes of football and football fans. And I think if football fans in England were to get together the way they did to kill the European Super League, they have a window of opportunity here to say, okay, actually, you know what? We could fix this. We could fix this right now if we all got together. And I think we're not that far away from this. We're really not that far away from this, where all the papers, every single one of the papers is like, got to get rid of Abramovich from Chelsea, but there's other questions that need to be asked of Newcastle and that need to be asked of Manchester City. And then do we stop there? Because Everton obviously have money from Usmanov. And I mean, ultimately, if a British billionaire buys Chelsea from Abramovich, what's the difference if it's just a plaything for rich people? This is a chance to take football back. I don't think they're going to take it, but if I was a football fan in England, I'd be like, is this our window of opportunity? Like, they had a game cancelled between Manchester United and Liverpool. They managed to cancel a game. The biggest game in world football was cancelled because the fans decided, we've had enough of this bullshit. But then they stopped. Because the signings happened and everybody's like, oh, we got Ronaldo. Maybe that's more important.
Well, I mean, yeah, and like what's going to be really interesting is that you talk about fans kind of coming together on this front. I think that there is a long way to go before that happens, because what we're seeing right now is a lot of sort of billionaire tribalism almost, where my billionaire is better than your billionaire. And it comes quite a lot if you look at the reaction to, say, Thomas Tuchel's press conference yesterday being like, oh, my Tommy boy has done such a great job. Why aren't you asking the same questions of the UAE, or why aren't you asking the same questions of Saudi Arabia? And it's like, just because maybe it's not getting the same level of coverage doesn't mean that the same questions can't be asked. But it does seem that there is a constant sense of pointing at another club rather than accepting what may or may not be going wrong at your own club. I think that is the first step before you actually get to that point.
That's all politics.
I think is it fair to be like disappointed with Tuchel yesterday? Like he was pretty pissed off in a way that I'm not sure he had any right to be pissed off yesterday, to be quite honest. Like, he was saying that I'm in a privileged position. I've never experienced war. That is fair, but you are also in a privileged enough position to work for Qatar and then subsequently work for Roman Abramovich. Your two bosses are Qatar and Roman Abramovich. I think if you're a pretty rich, pretty successful young manager, you have an opportunity. You have the privilege, as you said yourself, to say no to both of those things. If you really care that deeply to give out and to get pretty exercise in a press conference, then I would say that you probably care deeply enough to read up on Qatar and on Roman Abramovich to not take their money. So I'm not sure about that whole reaction from Thomas Tuchel. I definitely don't think that he's under any sort of I don't think there's any injustice towards Chelsea Football Club this week whatsoever. Maybe some of the top brass at Chelsea could ship a few more blows, considering Tuchel is going to be the face of the club at every press conference. But other than that, I don't think there's any sense of injustice. But Chelsea fans think that. And that's the key point here. If you're talking about some sort of collective fan movement, the fans have never been more divisive as they are now.
Tuchel has got to think about that, though. He is the face of Chelsea. And when people talk Chelsea now, they talk Roman Abramovich. And this war has escalated so quickly and has united people so quickly against it. Like, Thomas Tuchel, I don't think, was asked yesterday about his own position. But if you're having to sit in a press conference 3-4 times a week and make excuses or not defend, but somehow not comment on Roman Abramovich and his ownership and his links with Vladimir Putin, on a personal level, that's not a situation that Thomas Tuchel will want to be in. So do you get to a scenario quite quickly, if the club isn't sold, where Thomas Tuchel needs to consider his position as manager? Does he want to be the face of this day after day, week after week? Maybe it's something he's considered already, but watching him at the press conference yesterday, that was the thought I came away with, as to he probably would defend himself and say he's backed into a bit of a corner there. So what can he say? And maybe a press officer should come out alongside him and say, here is the club's stated position. But it is a personal thing now for an awful lot of people. And do you want to be in 5, 10, 20 years' time looking back at a press conference of you saying, there's nothing I could do about this? I'm not sure how sustainable that is for Thomas Tuchel. I also wonder, has a line been drawn in the sand in terms of ownership? Like Roman Abramovich is trying to get a fire sale, as you say, to sort of get his assets out of Britain as quickly as possible. But the way football has always worked is, once this scenario is dealt with,
it disappears.
Just move on.
Exactly.
Like with Usmanov. So suddenly the focus is turning to him, and well, actually, maybe his connections with Putin are even closer than that, or Roman Abramovich. So he should be the focus. We need to get rid of him first, and then we'll think about Roman Abramovich. And how, I know you say about the Super League and fans uniting and all of that, but I don't know practically how you go about a scenario of handing it back. The only way that would work, I guess, is if you were to strip the club of Chelsea and suddenly the government owns this and can hand it over to a supporters trust and say, if that is yours, go and do it.
You have to say that what we've decided, we're taking this opportunity. Football is a community asset and no individual can own more than 49% of the club. It's a new rule. We're rushing it through Parliament. It's getting slapped in immediately and away we go. Like there's a bunch of different mechanisms you could use to do it. The politicians could find a way if they decided that now was the moment they were going to do it. And like, frankly, I'd be amazed if it wasn't the type of thing that would garner massive political support right now. Now, you'll obviously end up facing legal battles from the Glazers and the billionaire owners of Villa and Leeds and all of those other clubs. But tough. You want to own 49% of the club, that's great. If you don't, divest yourself of the asset. Because the leeching off of poor Eoin here and the little money symbol over his head, we've got to stop that.
And there's also then a very kind of like a smaller issue and all of that, where the Premier League would just not want that themselves. Like, I mean, you talk about the money symbol over their head and they're like, wow, well, all these people from all over the world are willing to pay massive money for our television rights.
That's why they don't
Cristiano Ronaldo.
They don't get a vote. Like, it's the people have decided that we don't want Abramovich, but we'll take this billionaire. This billionaire is okay. This billionaire is not okay. Do you know how he made his money? Do you really? Do you want to find out, or do you not want to find out? And what about the situation in Yemen? And what about the situation in Abu Dhabi? And
what about then the other practical aspect of all of this? You're putting your trust in a British government that I would say is pretty nationalistic, and I would say that there are plenty of people in Westminster who get...
Every great plan has a fundamental flaw, and you found ours really quickly.
I would say that they get like a great kick out of the fact, you know, when they see, you know, they ring their French buddies and they're like, our league is better than yours, or their Spanish buddies, and they say the same thing because we've got the biggest, beefiest, most well-resourced league in the world, and that's why our country is great, is what the English people who have power might say.
It's probably true, to be honest. It's not going to happen. I understand it's not going to happen, but now is the window of opportunity to start. Like, also, people telling you can't do this because it turns out that's a lie. You can do whatever you want if it's for the greater good of most people, and it turns out in moments of crisis you can do absolutely anything you want. So this is a moment of crisis, I would say. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We've got loads more to come. Very briefly, Nathan, before we let you go, Mayo up to second. You're trying to keep this on the down low.
It's been at second for a while, actually.
Sustaining in second, maintaining, improving.
The Mayo players, I'm sure, are just honoured to be on the pitch as the great David Clifford, and to be near a team ranked one is, you know, to be second to that great Kerry team and all they've won. It's a real honour. Yeah, I think there's a quiet confidence, if it could ever be such a thing, in Mayo at the moment. When you look at the bench that they've had, the character that's still there, like, they do this all the time.
It's now or never, though, right?
When they were relegated.
It is now or never. It is.
But it was now or never in 2016. It was now or never in 2017.
And it felt like never. It did feel like never. And I did feel like at the end of those,
they come back. Like, Mayo are at that very elite level where the players that are turning out, much like Kerry, in that if you want to get into that Mayo squad, you have to be of a certain level, and that hasn't really dipped. So,
but the age profile of this
now
team,
or never.
Like, so Killian's coming back this year, and will he be able to maintain the level he's at for many more years? I don't know. Will Aidan O'Shea be happy with a bit part role for many years? I don't know. Also, the Dubs are at their weakest that they've been. Kerry aren't quite at the level they're going to get to with the two Wundakins who are coming into being a man at this stage, and they're going to be men for the best part of the next decade.
I think that they're close to their peak, to be honest.
You're making excuses for Kerry already.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying
I'm putting a level of pressure on Mayo that having
I'm saying
got
this is the year.
All-Ireland.
This is the year. Kerry are going to get better and better. Dublin are going to come back.
Just on that Caelan O'Connor point, is there a world in which that he's just a bit power player like Aidan O'Shea this year? That James Warren's like, I like my starting team. What we could do it is a little bit more firepower. And I'm not, bit power player is completely underselling it. I'm talking about coming off the bench with 50 minutes on the clock.
Closer.
Playing half an hour.
A bomb squad.
Well, he may have no choice. Like, if Caelan O'Connor isn't back as of yet, and the championship is going to be over in 4 months' time, and he hasn't played in a year, how long is it going to take him to get back up to full inter-county fitness? So are you easing him back in over the provincial championship where Mayo are playing Galway? Like, can they afford to ease him back in? He's not going to be first name on that team sheet in the next couple of months because they are going to have to manage his moments. So the hope, I'm sure, is that come end of June, July, that is when Caelan O'Connor is back to Caelan O'Connor at his absolute best. But he has suddenly an awful lot of depth. There's probably still, it's clearly not a transition. The transition is over, but there's still a lot of names there that people are getting used to and what their talents are and exactly what they do. Because like Lee Keegan, I think, was the only one who started against Armagh who had played in the 2017 All-Ireland final. So like this is a young Mayo squad. You're talking about the Kerry squad getting better. A lot of these Mayo players are going to get better and better over the next couple of years. And maybe this generation can be just as strong as the generation that went before.
And can I just ask one question? Like, if Mayo were All-Ireland champions, how much would that change? Like, just I know it's a big deal, but by into the fact that there would be a trophy sitting in the cabinet, I reckon Mayo will be favourites for this year's All-Ireland, and they're as big as 6-1. It's like they almost look like they're building. If they were All-Ireland champions, we'd be talking about these new fellas coming in being like, oh, as Dublin and Kilkenny showed in the past, you just need 1 or 2 new players to come into the squad every year to maintain that level. And that's what Mayo have shown at the start of this year. So I just think that there is still this kind of intangible thing about not having won in All-Ireland, which people are using to knock back Mayo's chances this year. Whereas if you look at the tangibles, they're in an extremely good position.
And that's understandable because they haven't won the All-Ireland. But I think if you're looking at a season as a whole, you have to look at the strength Mayo have and think they're going to be there in and around the semi-finals again. And from there, well, things always seem to happen, for good or for bad for Mayo. Whether they have that little bit of X factor that can get them over the line, whether they can score the penalty when they need to score the penalty. Like, these things we won't know, but it was no freak that Mayo got to an All-Ireland over the last couple of years, it turns out. I think at times it felt in 2020 that there was I wasn't expecting this sort of bonus territory. Last year they back it up. Maybe this year they go and back it up again. But it's not. It's also not straightforward. Like, Connacht is suddenly stacked. Like, having to play Galway or Roscommon to get through Connacht. Otherwise, you're going down a long route of qualifiers.
No, they like the qualifiers though. It'll suit this young team to be a bit off Broadway if they don't make it through the front door, and they'll be underdogs.
Mayo are never off Broadway. Broadway follows Mayo, Ger. It's a movable feast. Remember when they went to Newbridge?
Sure you managed to make a shit show of that, didn't you?
It was the first time Broadway had come to Newbridge in a long, long time, Ger.
Oh, look at you. What happened that day, Nathan? Did you win that game?
Well, hopefully Kildare follow up this great victory over the Dublin team as they followed up that great victory over the Mayo team. You
got a special prize for that too. Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million. Always
Cheers,
a pleasure to spend some time in your company of a Wednesday morning.
Thank you.
8 minutes past 8 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We have plenty more to come, including the great Tommy Walsh next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Six Nations on OTB.
Can you come on and talk about Ireland's attack shape? It's really exciting. I don't remember if we getting that call 15 years ago.
It's spinning! It's spinning!
Gone on it! I've never seen a team like Ireland before.
Excuse me? That's a bit offensive to us because we're Welsh. You could just keep your own opinion to yourself.
The Six Nations on OTB. Don't miss a moment of the action. Subscribe to the OTB Rugby podcast feed now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Number 6, I have Kilkenny. Again, going about business quietly, like they're in third place in the table. They win this weekend, like away to Dublin, and they're right in the mix again for a league semi-final. So enough said about them, lads. Okay, moving on. I have number 7, Tipperary. Again, Tip, Limerick, Clare, Antrim. The reason I have Limerick above Clare is because I expect them to go to Innis this weekend to take care of business, which would then put them on even points, but obviously the head-to-head is better. So I think this will obviously move as the weeks go on, as we get closer to the championship and things begin to heat up and full teams start going out as opposed to, half teams. This could change, but again, I reiterate, Wexford number 1 and full value for it.
I already anticipate a tweet at some point from @ShannonSiderFan 1994 or something like that coming to us during the week saying, I can't believe Skehill had Limerick outside the top 7. And where did you put them again, Paul? You in 4?
I threw him into 4th, yeah. It's quite reasonable. I'm not as dramatic now as James.
Dramatic? You sound like my wife now.
I'm very gradual with these things. I like to ease through them. So, I have him in 4th.
Right, that is this week's edition of the Hurling Pod. Paul Murphy and James Skehill are talking with Will O'Callaghan. You can listen to the podcast every Monday on the OTB Podcast Network. Subscribe to the OTB GAA feed. You can search for it there. Tommy Walsh, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Jared. Good morning, Eoin.
It's exciting in that Limerick are giving us all at least the pretense that we're going to have a proper championship this year where there's doubt about the outcome, and as a result everybody thinks they have a chance of winning it.
Yeah, and I suppose even if you go back to the Galway game when Galway beat them, they had the lads sent off, the conditions were terrible, so you could still make the excuse, listen, they're missing down a couple of players, they were down a man for a good 20-25 minutes, and they still, they were there right till the end. But I think the match against Cork at last weekend, that was a huge, I suppose, it's going to give a huge boost to every other county. Because, Cork were so far away from last year's All-Ireland final, like every team nearly over the last year or two. And suddenly they beat Limerick. No matter what team Limerick had out, and there are a lot of big names out, they beat them by 9 points. So I think whatever it does to Limerick, it'll give a boost to the rest of the country, Ger.
We hadn't planned to talk about this, but it just struck me there that there's a lot of stuff in the papers today about the hand pass rule and people wanting it to be clamped down on in the championship as much as it's being clamped down on the league. And if you think back to the Dubs, certainly always thought that the rule changes around the kick out were all aimed at making Cluxton less important. Is there a sense in Limerick that the hand pass rule and clamping down on it is targeting them specifically? Will they be able to turn that into something, some kind of a chip on their shoulders maybe as the season goes on?
Probably many other things, Jared, but I don't think the hand pass rule, because I think every player is nearly doing it at the moment. Why has it changed so much over the last couple of years? You go back 10-15 years, when you get the ball, drive it as far as you can. Now it's all about finding the man in the best position, the lad coming off the shoulder. These are all the phrases you hear now in the dressing rooms. Don't give away the ball cheaply. And towards you go back to 10-15 years ago, if you gave a hand pass to a guy around the back line or an extra maybe short stick pass, the crowd would be on your back straight away. Now it's the thing to do. If you hit the ball long and it goes to the spare man, then the crowd are on your back. So the game has changed. So we're seeing I'd say if you're to do stats on the amount of hand passes in the game today versus pick out a game 10-15 years ago, I'd say it's dramatic, the difference. So it's always going to lead to guys trying to do it faster, trying to do it quicker. The tackling is ferocious at the moment, so you don't have time nearly to throw it up, and give yourself a second to give a proper hand pass. So listen, it's a skill in the game. I'd be fully with the people behind the people that want it implemented, because we can't get to the stage where it's throwing the ball. Then it's a different game. Then the hand pass is a skill in itself. You have to see space between the hand and the ball. Now it's going to be difficult for referees to spot it. The game goes so fast. So I just think, like in the rugby, you have to see a foul before you can give it. A referee can't just guess. I think he thrown it there. If he sees it, he calls it. And I think it's up to the guys like ourselves on the podcast, the Sunday game, these not to be, I suppose, criticising the referees on these hand passes if they're calling it when they see it, as opposed to spotting every single one, because they won't be able.
And there's no sense that this is aimed at Limerick.
Then you're probably you're probably asking if there's going to be a chip on their shoulder. Like, when you're the champions, they're going to get the criticism, and they're receiving the criticism at the moment for playing on the edge, niggly stuff, and they have to accept it, because if you play the game the way they play it, and you're the champions, they're there for the last 3 or 4 years after winning 3 All-Irelands, and people are going to want you. The media are going to want to get a dig at you. Your opposition are going to want to get a dig at you. Even the neutrals, they want to see new champions. That's just the way sport works. Seen with Manchester United when they were going well in the Premier League. You've seen our own team. That's just life, And I think John Kiley's an astute manager. He'll be able to turn it, as you said, to kind of a chip on their shoulder. They've proved him wrong. And I think that's, Tommy Rooney said it to me there last week. Are the hunters now becoming the hunted? It's 100% right. He's on the money with that. They are now the hunted by every county, by every player in the country, because you want the champions. You want to be the best team. Because they're such a fiery kind of a team, that even brings out the passion even more in the opposition. So, yeah, I think they will bring a lot of things into that dressing room to give motivation for this year.
Did seem Limerick were pretty okay with handling the hunted tag last year. Has that shifted somewhat? Does that lessen? Does that mentality that I guess, it's almost a siege mentality, I guess, when everybody's after you, does that lessen over the years?
Well, Eoin, I'd say there's a huge difference in the last 2 years versus this year with the crowds. We see, the impact of a crowd. You go to Salt Hill, you go down to Nolan Park, you go to Crow Park with a full house and it's a 50-50 crowd. The opposition they're going to be louder when they're the underdogs, and maybe they start getting a run on you. So I think the big difference they'll see now is the last couple of years, when, say, little fracas happened in a game, there wasn't too much impact from a crowd because there wasn't many people there. This time of year, there was no one at the game. So I think it's going to be huge, the crowd impact. Like, you take when Cork start getting on top of you. Cork have always, going back traditionally through all the years on, they've outnumbered their probably opposition supporters nearly 2-1. A huge sporting county, huge followers. They'll follow their sporting teams to the ends of the earth. If they start getting a run on you, you will hear, it's like being in, Galatasaray over in Istanbul. That's the kind of, atmosphere you will have. And I think that will definitely feed into it on. And they won't have come across that the last year or two, Limerick.
There was a commenter in the other day who, tongue-in-cheek, was suggesting that the water breaks have been the end of the...
I don't think it was tongue-in-cheek at all.
Well, I was just about to say, you talk about the crowds there, and maybe you factor in the water breaks. All of these little inches probably add up to something in the comparisons between now and 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, the water breaks, I think for supporters, it's great. You like to see a free-flowing game. We've often seen how a game changes on the water break on. For players, it was kind of nice. You come out for a game, give it socks for 15, 17 minutes, then you can recharge and focus again. So it's going to be a big difference, I'd say, for players, getting used to playing for the full 35, 38 minutes. And I think Limerick, what they have done over the last couple of games, they've started to introduce a few new players. Well, a lot of their top players are still playing. It seems to me, looking at their team sheets or the first 3 games, they kind of play 2 in every line. Introduce a new lad, or maybe the likes of a David Reedy, who wouldn't have got much game over the last couple of years. So John Kiley, I think, is trying to introduce a panel again, give live games. Young Caelan O'Neill, centre forward, he scored a fantastic goal. He knows he can play him now in the championship. So I think for John Kiley this year, during the league, he's trying to find new players that he can implement, because he will need them come championship.
The point about the crowds too is last year's Munster final, when the game looks gone from them, when it's 2-16 to 12 points at half time, Tipperary absolutely killed them, and there's the incident before half time where there could have been a red card and there wasn't. Maybe if there's a massive Tip crowd baying for blood, the referee has a slightly different decision to make, and history changes. So I think that's it's even just an agent of chaos that we don't fully understand what the outcome is going to be in those two. So again, all the more reason for us to look forward to this year's championship, because I definitely think at the end of last year, when the All-Ireland final was over, it was what a great performance. It's brilliant to see a team reach a peak like that, but Jesus, is anybody ever going to catch them?
Yeah, and I think there's the beauty of the two sides of it there, Ger. I remember watching the darts, Phil the Power Taylor dominating the dart scene, and you'd be praying for a new champion, as you would, the underdog to come on and win. But then when he was gone, there was something missing. Like, I think we crave these geniuses, these great players, these great teams. It just gives you something to look forward to of a Sunday or a Saturday night. And that's what the joy of looking at this Limerick team is. They're not just a powerful team. Individually, they have just absolutely wonderful players like Cian Lynch, Aaron Gillan. Like, there's people, fans all over the country will go and see these guys just to see their individual performances. Kyle Hayes, you know, absolutely after taking the game to new levels as a wing back. He plays as a forward and as a back. I've seen him against Limerick before the Grove Hegarty incident. He shoved 3 or 4 lads out over the sideline. It was wonderful to watch. So Limerick individually have just majestic players that we all enjoy watching. And now the opposite, as you said, Ger. Last year we said, is there anyone to touch him? Suddenly Cork are coming. Wexford are coming with a good team. Dublin are starting to be competitive. I think the interesting thing with Cork we have to look at is, going back through the history of champions, they're nearly always, I suppose, the foundation of them is good under-21, good minor teams. You go back to the great Cork team during the 2000s, the Sean Oakes and the Don Logues, the Tom Kennys, the Rock. They won 221 All-Irelands, 97 and 98. You look at the Paddy Maher era, the Shamie Callan era with Tipperary. They won under-21 minor All-Irelands. Say Henry Shefflin, his team would never have won minors, but when he came to under-21, wins an under-21 All-Ireland. You look at the Dublin footballers who were winning, under-21 football Irelands. Even the Wexford team at the moment, the Lee Chin, Liam McGovern, all these guys won 3 under-21 Leinsters in a row, Ger. So this Cork team are not just coming out of nowhere. They're after being in 4 under-21 All-Ireland finals. They're in 1 or 2 minor All-Irelands as well. So listen, there's a foundation behind this team. They seem to be starting to gather momentum now as well, playing a lovely style of hurling. They seem to have learnt tactically from last year's All-Ireland final, looking at them last Sunday. They brought back young Mellerick, who's a tigerish defender, and kind of half-mark Cian Lynch. They left the centre-back Mark Coleman, kind of free at times. So, yeah, listen, it's exciting to look at the opposition.
It's going to be very interesting when you talk about that and Limerick, to see how it manifests itself in the summer. I think right now everybody accepts that it's just the league. But I just wanted to ask you on the football front, Tommy, because you've obviously got great experience of being in a team who won a series of All-Irelands in a row, just like the Dubs did when they did their 6 in a row, and all of a sudden things look like they've come crashing down a little bit. What's that experience like after you lose your first All-Ireland after winning 4 in a row? In your case, does it dent the confidence in the years after? Is it hard to get that sort of hunger back into the team?
Yeah, we were a little bit different in that we still had the same team on. So when we got beaten in 2010 for the 5 in a row, it was just to recharge the batteries, come back with hunger, look at Tip's style of play that they'd beaten us in 2010 with a kind of a movement that we probably wouldn't have seen in the years previous. Up to that, it was kind of everyone takes on their man and best player wins. 2010, Eamon O'Shea. And it's interesting to see his influence on probably Darry Egan, who is now in charge of Wexford, and the change in their style of play. But Eamon O'Shea was over Tipperary that time as a coach. And the movement that Lara Corbett, Owen Kelly, the Bonner Mar started introducing in them big games was something we hadn't seen before. So we had to learn from that as well. So we were probably coming from a different place. We were coming with the same team. We just had to recharge the batteries, get the hunger. And I think 2010, Tipperary were bet by traditionally Kilkenny's biggest rivals. Our fathers, grandfathers, it was Tipperary was their, biggest opposition. The great, Hell's Kitchen and the John Dials, the Jimmy Dials, the team of the 60s, the great Tipperary team of that era. So they grew up watching them, being beaten by them. So our chance then was to, I suppose, turn the tables. So when they beat us in 2010, it was after winning all the All-Irelands, it was a big dent to our pride, so we just came back all guns blazing. A different scenario, I think, to this current, they lost to Philly and McMahon's, Bernard Brogan, all these top players, Keane O'Sullivan, like the forwards they've lost even, Dearmid, and so I think it's just a different style. I think Cluxton as well, he probably will go down, the greatest players, Jack O'Shea in football, like the Gooch, Brian Muns, all these guys. But Cluxton has to be, nearly up to, with them. He has to be in the top 3 or 4 there. And he never gave a spare kick out. He was able to bring forwards into the play by their movement. He was able to pinpoint them that, it's going to be very difficult for any goalie to pick up that slack. And so I think that's probably a major difference in this Dublin team and our team.
Eamon O'Shea talked about the unbearable lightness of being. I remember sitting in his presence. I think it might have been Lar Corbett's. We did a show down there, and he was like, "Oh, that was, And his inspiration is a magic realist Czech writer from the 50s. You're like, well, this is different gravy that you were up against in that All Ireland that time." And O'Shea's influence can't really be understated. But you brought up Darragh Egan there. That's really interesting because, the difference in style seems to be quite pronounced from what Wexford were doing, and I think we'd written Wexford off really at the end of the Davy era. This is going to be a team who's spent. It's going to be very difficult for them to get back on track, but here they are straight away, raring to go, like they're a team completely re-energised.
Yeah, they are, and that's amazing what a little bit of freshness can do, and a little bit of a change. You often say a change is as good as a rest, Ger. I think Darragh Egan being the Wexford board deserve huge credit over the last maybe 10 years, Ger. They started off by bringing in Liam Dunn. Wexford, if you go back to the results before Liam Dunn came in, they were really starting to slip down into the second, the third tier. Liam Dunn came in as massive success he had with Owlart, both as a player and as a manager. Just a fiercely determined guy. Standards were going to be set really, really high. And he set them for 5 years. They had a few great wins. But what he set was a foundation in Wexford hurling, and then they came along, asked Davy Fitz to get involved, and what Davy done, I've been down in Wexford, I work down there sometimes, every young lad has gone down with a hurl. There've a huge number now of GDOs, the games development officers down there. They're all just after being employed over the last 5-10 years. So Davy Fitz has brought a huge energy, a huge enthusiasm, and it's back to being like that. If you remember, Wexford football was going very strong. It was nearly 50-50 at this stage. The footballers were nearly overpowering the hurlers. Now it's gone totally the opposite again. And I think Davy Fitz and just what he brought, the energy, the enthusiasm, the just joy of the game. And we're seeing that now because they're not just slipping away. They're bringing in new players, Ger. And now they're after implementing Darragh Egan as their new manager. And as I said, he's bringing probably the knowledge of the Liam Sheedy and Eamon O'Shea, that kind of, difference in tactics and that. So it's going to be interesting to see Wexford this year. I was at the Laois versus Wexford game in Rathdowney. It was the first Welsh Cup game. And the big difference I noticed was they were trying to get Conor McDonald and whoever else was inside, could be Rory or someone inside with him, one-on-one. And suddenly these guys in the full hurling, they're going from battling against 2 or 3 spare defenders to just 1v1. And if you see Rory O'Connor's goal against Antrim, up there in Antrim, the ball came in, it was against Clare down Nennis. Ball came in, one-on-one into the corner, rounded his man, goal. And that's the difference. So if you're against 2 or 3 spare defenders, suddenly then, it's a point. A point is your best chance. So I think Darragh has changed around things and brought probably a freshness to those setup.
So where are we at then in terms of one-on-one defending? Is there a movement away from the sweeper if you're seeing those chances? And I guess is the reaction to that going to be a reversion to that to try and stop Wexford getting into those one-on-one positions?
Yeah, I think what Limerick have been probably the best team in the country out of the last couple of years is holding on to the ball before you give in the ball into the full forward line. So Gerard Hegarty or Tom Morrissey, they look up. If the boys are free inside making the run, they will give it in. But if they're being held or if there's a spare guy back, they will just play around with it around the half-hour line and put it over the bar. So I think most people have been playing catch-up in that game regards. They get the ball, they look up, and they're just going to give it in. And I often see that the teams emerging now, they were, for the last couple of years, they bring it out lovely as far as midfield, but then they just give in a 50-50 ball. As opposed to Limerick, they bring it out as far as midfield and they either give in a 60-40 ball in favour of Aaron Gillan or Seamus Flanagan, or they hold it up, play it back across the field, back ways, and then over the bar. Whereas I think most other teams have been playing the other way. They bring it up lovely, the same as Limerick as far as midfield or half-back line, then they give in a 50-50 ball, if you like, high, low, it doesn't really matter. And I think we're starting to see a change there. We saw it with Cork last weekend. I've seen a few games with Wexford, we'll say at the start of the year. So now when they give it in, it's nearly a 60-40 ball.
I had one last question I wanted to ask you before we go, and it's about the Dubs. The Dubs, on the other hand, didn't make a change. Matty Kenny's been there now a good while. It's definitely his team, the implementation of his style of play, the relationship that he has with the players is kind of deep-seated at this point, and they're definitely responding to that as well. And they look like a group who are kind of coming to some kind of peak and some kind of fruition as well. I know, again, it's early stages, and they've obviously targeted the early stages of the league to be ready ahead of everybody else, but they're going to bounce into the championship with a lot of confidence.
They will, and confidence is huge. It's another part of the whole set-up, Ger. You play with confidence, you get an extra couple of points, you play with a bit more gusto, you play with a bit more fire. Instead of half hitting the ball going for a score, you drive it over with confidence, and that's what they seem to be playing with. I think Matty Kenny, you see, winning dictates everything, Ger. You win, wasn't it a great decision to stick with a guy? Towards say, if you bring in a new guy during the off-season and you win, wasn't it great to freshen it up? And I think it's all dictated by whether you win or not that following year. Now it's a great decision for Matty Kenny to stay on. In fairness to Matty, he spent 2 or 3 years there during COVID. Never really got to, the first couple of years, the training was haphazard or on and off. Now he's after getting a good spell with these guys. Like he has proven with Galway teams and Railway Cup teams in the past, he can do it. He has proved it with Tula in the past. He can win. He has the stuff to do it. And then you back it up like, Dublin are doing phenomenal work up there. They won the Leinster Colleges there recently enough. Again, so what is this team different? Like if you go back to last year's Leinster final, they beat Galway in the semi-final, and then they're missing 4 players with COVID. So again, interrupted that season. This year they seem to have their full, crew of players. Eamon Dillon is making great impact off the bench. Ronan Hayes is after turning into a terrific player. Danny Sutcliffe is back to his best winning high balls. So Crummy out around midfield. So I think what they are is that they're now their best players back again, and hopefully they get an injury-free run, for the coming few weeks.
If you were Matty Kenny and you've had really great experiences of getting the best out of Conor Callaghan, are you ringing him and saying, "Look, that football team, they're not going anywhere. You can see there's no glory in trying to chase another All Ireland in football, but if you were to win an All Ireland in hurling, that would turn you into one of the greatest GAA players of all time." Unquestionably. Would you not just be tempting him? Would you not be ringing him up and saying, "No pressure here, Com, but greatness is right there for you"?
Sure, I think the first decision he needs to make is get you into his backroom team, because I'd be WhatsApping him, I'd be Snapchatting him, I'd be putting it on Instagram, I'd be doing everything I can to bring in Conor Callaghan. I think, the Henry Shefflin move to Galway has to be a lesson probably to every club, every county in the country. Why don't you ask? Like, who would have thought Henry Shefflin would have went? Like, I drove up there last September, October to Galway. Like, it's a terrible road. Like 2.5 hours of just hardship driving. There's no, you're not on a motorway. It's tough driving. They went down and they asked him. They had the confidence. They had the, the wherewithal to say, "Listen, why won't we let him say no?" And now he's up there in Galway, and again, kind of like a Davy Fitz impact in Wexford. It's not just an impact on Galway, it's an impact on the whole county, really. There's an energy about the place. And going back to your point about Conor Callaghan, ask him a few times. If he says no the first time, make him say no the second time. And, and maybe it's not straightforward to come in and you have to train every day of the week. Work around it. You have to make exceptions for players like him. So I'd be asking him every day of the week, all day long, Ger. So it'd be a great addition.
It's been a while since we've seen Conor Callaghan in the national sense of things, of going on an All-Ireland run with his club, with the hurling in his hand, and obviously there's been no inter-county hurling for him. So over the last few years, Tommy, is there a bit of brushing up to do, or does he just slot into, I know this is a completely fictitious scenario we're discussing here, but if it did actually become fact, does he seamlessly slot into like being one of the best hurlers in the country? Because I think you had him down as one of the best, maybe the best hurler in the country when Cuala were All-Ireland champions a few years ago.
Yeah, and I think at that time he definitely deserved it, because he can do it on the biggest stage of the club scene. He can do it anywhere, as far as I can see. What does he have to do? Like, anyone, I suppose, that watches Conor Callaghan playing hurling, like Mick Fennelly even said that time for Kilkenny, like, it wasn't born out of a first touch. It was mostly running onto the ball, using his speed, using his strength, using his ability to go past players. That's Conor Callaghan's strength. It's not ball comes into him, say 90 mile an hour, he controls it, goes around the guy. His guy was nearly always running onto a ball. Like, he had huge power, huge speed, and that's how he got his goals. And that's what made him, you know, such a phenomenal player, that he could turn games. Like the great players with the burst of speed, the Ronaldo's, the Messi, they get the ball, they're gone, goal, before you even look up. So I think, I think just get him back in, get him pucking off a wall, and I think it'll all start coming together. Listen, the great players can pick it up quick enough. Give him back 2 weeks and they just have it again. So, I'd be bringing him in and just, you know, I'd say he'd have it back fairly quickly.
I'm sure the Dublin hurling supporters are rolling their eyes at us even having this conversation, but it is interesting to consider that there aren't that many other counties who would have access to really top quality players who we've seen win Club All-Irelands and be the best player, who are just unavailable to them. It's very rare in other counties that anybody would pick not to play with an All-Ireland contender, and sprinkling him in would actually make a significant difference. There probably does come a point in the future where if the hurling team can continue at its current progression, where some players will pick hurling over football.
Yeah, and that's it. You were growing up in Dublin for the last 15 years. There was no choice really. The footballers were just so good. They were like a Premier League team really. They were famous everywhere. They played a beautiful brand of football. They did things the right way. They had great management teams, going back even to the Pillar, really good personalities, Jim Gavin, now Desi. Like, it's just definitely, they had the X factor. So the only change, I suppose, that can happen is if Dublin start winning. So hurling now. So if they start winning, suddenly you have a choice to make. Like they had a great win under Anthony Daly back in the Leinster final that time. If, they got to the semi-final and could have got to the All-Ireland final that year against, I think it was Cork. And who knows, like, if they could get back there again under Matthew Kenny, get a bit of luck this time and get over the line. And then absolutely Dublin will become a powerhouse, because, listen, there are millions of people up there. Their clubs are huge. And they're huge, we often go up there playing challenge games and that. There's a huge love of the game up there. And as soon as they start winning, maybe, Leinster finals, because they're doing it at every other grade, under 21 minors, schools. So this is the missing piece in the jigsaw. And you go to the All-Ireland champions this year, Limerick. If they were missing one player, say if they were missing Cian Lynch, would they have won the All-Ireland last year? If they were missing Kyle Hayes, Aaron Gillan, would they have won the All-Ireland last year? So look, flip that with Dublin. If they have one extra player that chose hurling instead of football, possibly they can be All-Ireland champions. So definitely competing, Jerry,
Yeah, and look, there's no bias here. I don't really care if he plays one way or the other. It's just be really great experiment to see what happened, because I know all the Dublin football fans are already angrily texting in saying
he's been on the match day programme for the Dublin footballers this year. It's not going to happen, but you never know.
Yeah, but I think the interesting point you make there, Jerry, is that possibly not for Conor Callahan now. That probably ship has sailed. It's the next Conor Callahan, the next lad coming out of minor. This is the guys they need to focus on Dublin. Do everything they can to sell them the game of hurling, sell them the love of the game of hurling and the future that they're going. I think that's what they really need to do. Like, how often have you seen a manager in other sport coming in on a losing season and suddenly turn things around with his passion, with his, his influence, his ability to get people to run behind him. So I think Dublin, that's where probably they need to put in the effort, is the next guy that has to make the choice. Let him choose hurling. Put all your eggs in that basket, and do everything you can to get him on board.
I just have one last question, Tommy, just on Henry Shefflin in Galway. It was actually just after the Limerick win when Fintan Burke came out. He got man of the match, I think, so he was speaking and he was saying that there's no stats, there's nothing, we're just focused on enjoying our hurling. Are you surprised by that? Are you surprised that that's kind of the way Shefflin's gone, that it is all about kind of free-flowing, I guess, instinctive hurling rather than being bogged down and getting straitjacketed, I guess, by statistics and by a rigid game plan?
Like I know Henry Shefflin, Richie O'Neill, these guys are guys that are massively prepared, put huge hours of work into preparing teams. Like Fintan Burke mightn't be seeing statistics in that, but I'm sure Richie O'Neill and Henry Shefflin and his team are. They're probably portraying it, probably giving the messages in a different way, I would imagine, because I know Henry Shefflin since he was 18 years of age. There's no one that would prepare better, a team or himself. So statistics, yes, Fintan Burke mightn't be seeing the statistics, but I'd be shocked if Henry and Richie O'Neill and their team aren't looking at him day in, day out. They're not living back in the old days. They're looking at video analysis. They're looking at stats. I would be guessing. I'd put my house on it, to be honest. So I'd say it's the messages they're portraying to the boys is probably keeping it simple, but I'd say just in a different way.
That's what you want to see, isn't it? That for no second was I suggesting that he hasn't done his preparation or anything like that, but I guess there is a sense that some players can get too bogged down and get given too much unnecessary information.
Yeah, I think probably different ways of giving a message. Like you come up to a team and you say, even say, Eoin, there was 40 hooks and blocks last weekend. You didn't do any of what's going on. And that's one way of giving it. You could also say to the team, listen, lads, we had 100 hooks and blocks last year when we won a game. We only now at 40. What's going on? Towards a simpler way would just go over to the lad and goes, you're not working hard enough. I haven't seen you hooking and blocking. What's going on? There's different ways of conveying a message, and it depends on your style. I'd say it depends on the manager really on what way he's going to give it. So there's more than one way of doing it, and I would imagine Henry's way will probably be pulling the lad to the side and asking him the questions like that without regards to throwing stats at him.
Were you guys wearing GPS? Had it come in by the time you'd finished up?
I think they're starting to come in, but you're kind of trying to avoid them.
Because
like the GPS, like the only kind of my explanation on GPS is like, surely you can see it with your eyes how a player is doing, and like I remember games where I ran around, I could have done 10 kilometres and had a terrible game. And another game you did half the running, but you were more clued in, you were more focused, you were where the ball was, and you had a much better game. So, Jared, I think GPSs have to be used probably in the right way. I know hurling or football is more a game where there's a lot of running, but positional sense in hurling is massive. Like you have a cornerback or a fullback or even a centre back, you could be running all over the place and doing nothing. Whereas you could have another lad with, he knows where the ball is going to be. Brian Whelan, I always love the story about Brian Whelan. He was playing beside the guy, or he was managing the team, I think, and he just couldn't understand how the lads weren't winning the ball. Well, how do you win it, Brian? You just go where the ball is and you win it. This. He is because he just went where the ball. He was doing it since he was probably 5 or 6 years of age, blowing bar himself and Johnny Pilkington, Dahi Regan and the lads, and that was his way of doing it. So I think GPSs, they have to be used with kind of common sense knowledge really, but go back there and they're only coming in that time, and they try to stay away from really because we're only giving out to 2 or 3 players at a time. We didn't have to.
How did they pick who got them? Was it like the lads they thought weren't doing any work? It's like, right, and it's kind of like, this is the special bib for you because we don't think you're doing any work, so off you go.
We used to just hand them to Conor Forward and these lads. We knew they'd run and use their fitness and say, listen, they're best used on me. So we just, I'm not sure. I can't really be honest. I remember there was only a few of them anyway. You tried not to have one anyway.
Tommy, good stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks.
Okay, lads. Good morning. Bye.
Tommy Walsh back with us this morning. Suitably whetting the appetite for this year's championship, I think.
Oh yeah, just want to watch hurling now, and it's like it does feel. Is there anything that they can do to try and make these games around this time of year more? I don't know, not interesting, because there's a lot of very interesting storylines, but how can they make them matter a little bit more? Like I guess what they've done is that they've made the summer so awesome that it's very hard to look at any other format.
I was thinking about this, right? So there's too much. There's all the football matters because of the Tailteann Cup, kind of, but also because the Division 1 quality is so good, and the hurling is on at the same time. So there's these weekends where if you want to keep up to speed with what's going on, it's like 3 matches on Saturday and 3 matches on Sunday, and you need to watch them all because something relevant is happening in all of them. Like Wexford have been reborn. Tip were going great until Wexford beat them. Galway have Henry Shefflin as their manager. Cork are back, and Limerick are potentially the greatest team of all time, all at the same time. And the Dubs have won every game. Like it's a mad start to the league campaign.
Yeah.
And the quality of hurling that Antrim have been doing is like proper Division 1 hurling, and they've been really unfortunate. There's a million narratives there where you could literally do 3 hours on hurling 4 nights a week at the moment, and it's not even championship.
No.
So there is a problem, and they're on the same time, and they're on the same week, and it is this very condensed season. I was actually thinking about this in the context of the folding in the camogie and the women's Gaelic football. If the split season is going to be inter-county first and club second for all of these sports, then I think they're missing a trick. Wouldn't it be great if the inter-county men's and the inter-county women's were divorced from each other, so that club season and inter-county season are reversed? Because if you look at the lessons that the Six Nations have learned, putting everything on at the same time diminishes the amount of coverage that you can get. They split the Six Nations women's last season, and it was the first year that it got separate coverage because the games aren't on the same day. They're not completely overshadowed. I think that that might be the solution to we're handing over coverage to the other sports. Well, we're not. We're just going to have the women's be the second half of the year and the men's be the first half of the year, and there's inter-county action all year round for everybody to go and support their county team.
That would be a really good idea. It's very hard to counter that, because I would say that even the men's side of things would probably face the worst weather of the year, given that your women's All-Ireland will kick off, or your league will kick off in July. And you can have a little bit of an overlap in the middle when it's getting to the semi-finals and finals of the men's. The first couple of rounds of the women's leagues could kick off, and then you've got your All-Irelands in October, November. And I dare say that it's not going to be as bad as January, February, March, when the majority of the men's season is on. I think it's a great idea, and I'm not sure has it been mooted in those talks, but I haven't seen it anywhere. It's a great shout.
So this is a story in the papers today. LGFA chief warns integration not a silver bullet for facilities. A war of words has broken out between the LGFA and Liam O'Neill, although Liam O'Neill's trying not to. So he was in the papers talking about how he had tried to get this going in, I think it was 2014 when he was the president. But Helen O'Rourke has said the LGFA is not opposed to integration with the GAA and Camogie Association. She warned that a merger of the three might not be the silver bullet to ensuring equal access to playing facilities. It's also the back page of the Mail this morning. Michael Clifford and Owen Cormack both have this story in the Examiner and the Mail. So Helen O'Rourke has said in her annual report, which is ahead of Congress this weekend, she says she's claiming O'Neill sought to ram through a merger before his term ended in 2015. She's alleged that O'Neill was insistent on it happening in his term or not at all. That's a quote. Lamenting how different the GAA family might look today if the process started in 2014 had continued then for the right reasons. O'Neill has said that he doesn't think there's any benefit in looking back on past failures, nor did he wish to get involved in controversy. And there was a line there which I can't find now, but it was about talking the language of unity. He wants to speak the language of unity now, so I think that's a good line. Despite the public perception for some years, this is Helen O'Rourke in her Congress report, the LGFA is not against integration of the three associations. Quite the opposite, in fact, and we do not need outside influences and uninformed sources to tell us that this is where the future lies. Are the outside influences the GPA? Who else is involved here? I'm not sure. Our stance at all times has been to ensure that a proper, open-minded process would take place involving stakeholders of all three associations, where matters relating to integration at all levels of the associations would be debated and ironed out prior to the formation of a new incorporated body. So they are talking about a new incorporated body as well, not just the GAA with the bolt-on. So the Congress last week, yay, let's do this. The LGFA saying, hang on a second now, you're blaming us for what happened in the past. That's not accurate. We were being... what was that phrase? Rammed. It was being rammed. Whatever. To ram through a merger. It's interesting. I don't think this is. Don't think it's going to be straightforward at all.
Like, there's definitely been a question about who's been holding this whole thing up over the last little while, and it's still very hard to get any clear answer on that.
Yeah, it is hard. I don't know why they can't all just get in a room and go, we're starting the process. This is the process. This is our intended outcome. Here's how we're going to get there. Like, there's loads of outside consultancy firms who could help with this. What are the gaps? What would prevent it from happening? What are the red lines? And what's our stated aim? And it seems like it should be relatively straightforward, but it's interesting in that these three separate organisations can't, for whatever reason, come together, even though they're all together at club level. in loads of clubs around the country. Anyway, it's 8:49. If you've got a view on that or any of the stuff that we talked about, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. John Duggan is with us. John.
Ger, and Owen, how are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. What's going on?
Well, 3 more clubs will be in the FA Cup quarterfinals tonight. Liverpool against Norwich. We got Chelsea going to Luton and Southampton West Ham. That latter game should be very interesting with both clubs in form. We had the whole Spurs debate last week, so there's no point going back over old ground.
Oh, well, that's not how life works, John.
It is. In my world, it is.
Well, that's not how life works. We had the whole debate last week, and then we thought they turned a corner at the weekend. Yeah. We were like, I can take the Burnley thing and can put it in the context of the other 2 results either side, but it's on, off. That's what seems to be happening. How are you feeling?
Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. Apathetic.
You know what that is, Owen?
I've no idea, to be honest.
Have you not seen the Karate Kid movie?
I've seen the Karate Kid, John.
Okay, that's all right then. So
behind her, a little bit of tension just developed there, but I managed to quell it.
Yeah, you've probably seen Cobra Kai, and I haven't seen that, to be fair.
It's grand.
I've heard it's fantastic.
You've heard it's fantastic?
Yeah, all my friends rave about it.
Well, I mean, they're millennials. That's
and my dad, he's not a millennial.
Right, it's grand. I don't know. We got a couple of episodes in, and we're like, this is a bit of hard work. Maybe it gets better.
I'm not sure. I'd say your taste is just bad.
That's also potentially inaccurate, but go on.
So Spurs, my only reading on it, Laz, is that he doesn't trust the squad. He played the same team, and the current players in the first 11 aren't able to do it twice in 1 week. That was my feeling on it, because they were flat as pancakes, if you excuse the pun, last night, and Middlesbrough deserved to win.
Well, how did you have your pancakes yesterday, folks? What did you do? You bought the ones from Dunn's again, Owen, didn't you? Instead of it's literally the easiest thing in the world to make.
Didn't even do that.
You didn't?
Didn't have any pancakes yesterday.
What? That's not like you. Normally you get some shop bought cardboard.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I think
wolf them down.
I think that they're underrated. But no, I actually kind of forgot, to be honest, and I was kind of like too lazy when I remembered later.
Religion is just falling off your radar now that you're godless.
Oh no, I'll have ashes on my forehead today, I hope.
John?
Pancakes are my favourite food in the world.
Oh wow.
The crepe ones with the old lemon and sugar, but I'm off everything like that since January the 1st.
Oh right.
Until Easter Sunday.
Wow.
So
that's hardcore. You're like 80 days, yeah?
Yeah, including booze, everything is gone. It's fish and chicken since January the 1st until Easter Sunday. So I think on Easter Sunday I'll be going a bit mad for about 10 days.
What are you going to have?
Pancakes probably, and booze and Easter eggs and nothing else.
John Duggan's the man to be with this Easter Sunday.
Yeah, I'm going to rise again. So I'll be hanging off the chandelier somewhere.
Right, that sounds good.
The first day of my holidays. And then we've got the Grand National the next day, so it'll be good fun. So yeah, Spurs, yeah, look, there's not much to be said. I've got nothing to say. Other than that, the 2 hours of dross cost me 2 hours sleep last night.
Conte,
afterwards he was quite mellow. So
where did he go, you know? Or maybe he didn't care about the cup. Is it?
No, I think he would. We all care. I really would have loved to. I'd love to have gone to an FA Cup final. We haven't been one in 31 years. And we need to win trophies. Spurs need to win trophies for the whole mental concept of Spurs being a wishy-washy team that are flaky. It's all about the summer, what he gets in the summer. Does he get money in the summer and who he buys? Kulusevski, to be fair, has been a good signing.
Yeah, they're already very quick. Is there more news or is it time for us to get into?
Not much. Like Caelan Gallagher was interesting. Klopp saying at the press conference that he's not for sale, he's not going anywhere. Then he kind of pivoted to, if he does go out on loan. But he sees him as a quality asset behind Alisson at the moment.
Alone next year, if once Klopp has put that out there, it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle if you're Kelleher, right? You're like, I could go on loan.
Yeah.
We should explore that in the summer, boss. Let's do that.
I think Klopp just wants to make sure that he's got backup behind Alisson if Kelleher does go.
Yeah.
Other than that, Roman Abramovich, I think Chelsea's going to be sold based on everything I'm seeing this morning. So look...
Well, it'd be interesting to see. We'll keep a close eye on that over the next while, who the potential buyers are and whether or not anything is done about what's the difference if the club falls into the ownership of another person who at some point in the future we shouldn't have sold that club to you. Like, now's the time. Now is the moment to go, okay, football clubs should be in the ownership of fans' trusts. Anyway, we'll talk about that again. We've already talked about it this morning, but if you've got a view on it, you can get us 0879 180 180. It's time for Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive. Oh!
So this is the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It starts tomorrow in Bay Hill in Florida. And I've got 4 golfers for you, okay? These are on OTBSports.com and on the OTB app if you want a further rationale. But the first one, the headline tip this week, we got 1,200 from 1,000, 20% profit for the year so far. Last week, it was a Willy Wonka moment. It was Keith Mitchell tied for 9th. Just out of the places, you get nothing. But we go again this week, right? So the headliner, Matt Fitzpatrick of England, has never won on the PGA Tour, 4 each way, 30-1, is in great form, had a stomach bug, missed the Genesis Invitational before that, 10th at Phoenix, 6th at Pebble Beach, is 2nd on strokes gained on the PGA Tour this season, has got a great record at Bay Hill. Look at it, tied 10th, tied 9th and 2nd in the last 3 years, won the US Amateur back in 2013. I think Matt Fitzpatrick is going to break through, and this could be the week for him to do it at 30-1 for 4 each way. That is the headliner. The second one, Rory McIlroy for 12-1 for 3 each way. The reason why he's not the headline tip is because I think his irons need a bit of work, his wedge game needs a bit of work. On the other hand, I think Rory McIlroy is generally a guaranteed each way play in a lot of these things for small profit. When you think about it, the last 5 starts at Bay Hill, he's been in the top 10 every single time. He won it in 2018 with the 64. We know he drives the ball very well. 4 par 5s and a par 72, 12-1, 3 each way for Rory McIlroy's number 2. Number 3 is Keith Mitchell, who I put up last week as a headliner, 35-1 for 3 each way, playing the best golf of his life, 3 times in the top 12 in his last 4 starts. And at Bay Hill, he's got a tie for 5th and a tie for 6th in 3 starts. Once again, great off the tee, Keith Mitchell. Puts well on the Bermuda greens. I think he's a rock-solid proposition. You've got to stick with these people. And lastly, Christian Bezuidenhout is 55-1 for 3 each way. Actually, 60-1. I got him 3 each way, 60-1 for Christian Bezuidenhout from South Africa. This is the course where he made his mark a couple of years ago. He was 4th going into the final round, finished tied for 18th. Last year, we put him up in the slot for this tournament and he finished solo 7th. He closed with a 66 last week at the Honda Classic, and I think like South Africans like Bezuidenhout are not afraid to win. He's won a lot of times the European Tour on tough courses. So Bezuidenhout, Mitchell, McIlroy and the headliner Matt Fitzpatrick for the Bay Hill Invitational, which is now called the Arnold Palmer Invitational, starts tomorrow. Padraig Harrington and Graham McDowell are also in the field, as are John Rowe and Victor Hovland. And also bonus content, you want to check out OTBSports.com and OTB app for the Puerto Rico Open. I've also made selections for that tournament. So we did a double one this week, lads, and hopefully we'll get some return out of it.
All right, OTBSports.com/virtual insanity to get the tips and to check how they're going over the course of the weekend as well. That's with this week's Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
Right, more from John, of course, on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk from 1 o'clock. Reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Let's turn our attention at 8:57 this morning to rugby. Here's Felipe Contepomi being linked with the vacant Argentina head job. He was asked about it yesterday. Have a look.
Well, it would be great as a professional. When you're in professional sport, it's very, very difficult to plan ahead too much, you know. So it would be great if I can draw the line how I want my career to happen. You know, maybe as a doctor you can pre-call, like I'm doing 2 years here, 5 years there, then move into, and if that doesn't happen. But imagine that Lionel Messi, one of the best, greatest ever sport footballers, he couldn't decide about his future, what is left for us, you know. So it's not much that you can do. Definitely, I would say, if you ask me, would you like to coach internationally? Well, yes, I can say yes. When? I don't know, because in this profession, I think you prepare yourself, and you're always preparing yourself, and when opportunities arrive, you just go for them, you know. But I can tell you here in Leinster, I'm still developing and I'm still growing. I feel I'm still learning every single day. So the day I stagnate in my learning curve in a place, that's the moment you definitely have to move on. For the moment, it didn't happen here in Leinster to me.
Right, it's Felipe Contepomi, who obviously has been linked with the vacant Argentina head coaching gig. It kind of came up surprisingly enough, given that we're relatively close in rugby terms. You know, it's mid-cycle for a World Cup. He was in Argentina number 10 himself, so it's fair enough for him to compare himself to Leo Messi.
Yeah, and I think it's fair enough for him to be in the mix for the job as well. I think he's probably given a fairly clear answer there, though, that he's still developing his coaching career, and going in to be the head coach of his own nation is a pretty high stakes job to take if you're not fully ready yet. Maybe Argentina are not in the best place either. I think they haven't played a home test since 2019 or something like that at this point, so COVID has really ravaged a lot of the Southern Hemisphere teams, and especially Argentina's chance of progression over the last little while. They are one of those teams that, as we know well, tend to peak perfectly for a World Cup.
I was going to say, is that not the perfect time to ride in where, look, I don't have that much experience, well, it's going to be a learning curve for me, we haven't had home matches, everybody's around the world, and you get them all back together and you go, everybody says we're rubbish. What are you going to do about it? Felipe is the man.
Yeah, I guess he can do that with the Leinster players after their chastening defeat to La Rochelle last year. He's like, everybody thinks that we're too small, not big enough, and maybe that's what he's doing.
So
this
do
year.
we've just signed a big South African,
and so that's where he's going to go with this. I think that he's part of a really good coaching staff. I think Stuart Lancaster and Leo Cullen probably two amazing people to work around, I'd suggest, and if you're working in Northern Hemisphere rugby. But then I would suggest that if he's thinking about a dream job down the line, I'm sure that being the head coach of Argentina is the one that he would like to get. So now's not the time, it seems, is what he's trying to say.
Yeah, is he saying that? No, that sounded like a come and get me plea in stereotypical football. No. That's what I heard. I was like, of course I want to manage it. Of course I want to. If they ring me up, I'm going to talk to them.
Yeah, but he said now's not the time, essentially, because he laid it out in black and white that he's still learning.
Yeah, but that's what you say. You can't say, I'm ready for this job, because then everybody, you're like, look,
I'm taking him. I always take press conferences at face value.
Well, I really want him to stay. It's we haven't had enough club rugby this year. We just haven't had enough club rugby. And we haven't had a period where there's 8-10 weeks in a row where we're watching the team playing against good quality opposition in fixtures that are in the fixture list for a long period of time, that you can go, we're going to see what happens over this period of time. And they have too many players at the moment who are all capable of playing in the team. So it's very difficult to know exactly how well Leinster are doing. They seem to be doing brilliantly, but I definitely want to see a couple of seasons of Felipe's influence on that group, and to hear that the out halves and the backs talk about the influence. Harry Byrne missed out on Ireland's Six Nations squad. Felipe was asked about him because obviously they've been picking him and his brother starting at 10 and he's playing in the centre. So here's Felipe talking a bit about that.
Well, for me, I think he has to be happy that he's getting minutes. When was the last time he played 3 games in a row? I can't remember, or I don't know if I've been here. So now that he's been having a few games, under his belt, and for 80 minutes, and then 180 minutes, 60, and then another 60 last weekend. So I think it's good for him. That's what he needs to play. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure he would love to play 10, because he's a natural 10, but for what I've spoken to him, and he's feel happy just to play and doing it with his brother and being at the same time when they play in that unbroken play or unstructured, he puts himself a lot in the first position as a first receiver, so he's good.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? When play breaks down, he puts himself in at number 10. It's like, get out of the air. That's what you need, though, right? Everybody's giving out about Carberry at the weekend not being Johnny Sexton, and it's like next guy up is not. He's going to learn from that.
Yeah, it's. Would you say that there's still a window here for someone like Harry Byrne to kind of ram his way in, as to use that LGFA phrase, into the squad before next year? I think that the questions still remain about what's going to happen with that jersey over the next little while, and it's very hard to gauge exactly how it's going to turn out. And you can look at that through the collection of out-halves that are currently operating within the Ireland camp, or you can look a little bit outside, because Contepomi is obviously working with Harry Byrne, and then there's obviously a couple of guys coming through at Munster, and it'll be very interesting to see as well what Connacht will do recruitment wise this summer as well, because there's obviously a couple of younger again out halves in Leinster that'll be coming through looking for game time, and the backlog that already exists at Leinster will just get longer.
Well, we were talking about Frawley as being that potential out half centre player, and then it's like actually they pick Harry Byrne there for a couple of games, and it's like, oh, which of them is it going to be? And ultimately we expect it won't be any of them, because it's going to be Ringrose and Henshaw in the centre for Leinster.
Yeah, so he's kind of pushed out.
Yeah, and that question persists then about the Ireland team for England. Who are you picking in your centres? If, let's say, the return to play protocols all go well for Robbie Henshaw, and it seems that will be the case. Everybody's going to be fit. It's Aki, it's Ringrose, and it's Henshaw. You can pick two. Who are you picking?
The first two, you're picking Aki and Ringrose, I think. And
are you?
Well, I mean,
Robbie Henshaw, our best player over the last 18 months.
And just coming back as well. And I'd like you, out of those three, who is the least droppable for a game against England? I know he got sent off last year, but the answer is Bundy Aki, isn't it? Aki has to start against England. So who are you picking at 13? Are you picking?
Well, I don't think Ringrose is droppable at the moment. So why does Aki have to start?
Because of the power.
But maybe we need to try not to just use power, because ultimately they're going to get Manu Tuilagi back. And when Manu comes back, do you have to pick Aki to play against him, or do you think what's going to happen here? What is there a way of beating Manu Tuilagi without power? Maybe there isn't. Maybe it's simple.
It's maybe not, but it's not just about like beating them with that either. I think at every position, if you have an added layer of power, it's going to benefit you. So it's not just about necessarily how you target England on that front. I think also Aki's just been excellent as well, and I think he's possibly been Ireland's best midfielder over the last little while. So
he's playing pretty well. He's playing pretty well.
But and it's like, what is the one thing that he brings with it the others don't, and maybe it is that powerful running. Against England last year, it was Henshaw 13, Aki at 12. Which was their starting midfield. Obviously, there was a situation where Aki goes off and Henshaw's man of the match, and that's again, it's a full year from away at this point.
Yeah,
so
and Ringrose's form wasn't great this time last year compared to what it is now. Like he's definitely taken the setback of the lines and kicked on. Cian Prendergast was also out talking. He was one of the developmental players called up to the Ireland squad. This was from the Connacht press conferences yesterday about what he learned from his time so far in the Irish camp.
Well, I think when you always go up a standard, it's always raised, and the intensity of training goes up, and the speed of training and the quality of play. Like ultimately, you have some of the best players in the world. You're training with them every day, so you always feel like you have loads to work on. But then I think when you start, like for me, the first couple of days I was kind of a bit all over the place. My head was a bit scrambled because there was so much new things to learn. But then I just tried my best to just kind of stick to my game and then take on board what the coaches were saying, and then go from there. Like there's obviously things you can work on and stuff like that, but I think you don't want to get away from what's got you there, rather than like don't try to change your game completely. Obviously work on the things you've been told that need to be worked on, that can take you to that next step, but don't ultimately come away from what makes you the rugby player you are.
Kildare's Cian Prendergast there, of course, member of the Suncroft GAA club, Anthony Rainbow's club. How great a team would we be if we had him?
I was just about to ask, is he not also being drafted into the movement in Newbridge this year?
I mean, look, if the split seasons ruined that, hasn't it?
Yes.
There'll never be a situation where anybody can double job.
I mean, if I would like to think, if Glenn Ryan is thinking about the situation logically, he'll look at the squad announced for the All Blacks tour, and if a certain C. Prendergast is not on that team sheet, it's like, come on in.
Yeah.
Full back, full forward, midfielder.
Yeah, like a hard running right half forward who his job it is to sweep around the half back line and then tear forward.
Yeah, that works. Like, Prendergast has been excellent all season, and it's going to be very exciting to see where this guy actually goes over the next little while. He also seems like an absolute pain to play against, not just in the sense of obviously what he brings physically, but also if he gets one over on you, he likes to rub it in your face a little bit like James Lowe. A little bit of a, if you're an opposition fan on a provincial level, you're like, screw that guy. But that guy is going to be playing for Ireland, and all of a sudden everybody from the four provinces will be happy that guy is
a little bit of that attitude is exactly what Connacht need, right?
A little bit of nastiness. I mean, there's no sense that, like, I mean, he is he's underhanded or anything in his play. It's just the after effects of a big collision or something like that. But that's what we possibly need more of, not only in a Connacht sense but in an Ireland sense as well.
It's something Joe Schmidt would not have been too hot on, but that the new Ireland is like, well, come on, let's have a little bit of this. 8 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM, brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day on the Gaelic football. I'm not sure I should be reading out some of this. I really shouldn't. MOC says Mayo are bottlers. Kerry a shoe-in for All Ireland this year. Shoe spelt SHOE, by the way. So it'll be a toe in the hole for Kerry to kick them through the door. Is that it?
That's exactly what he means.
As opposed to like, shoe. Lauros says Mayo are worth a bet, but looking at Kerry at the moment, they're really playing great football as a team. And Barry says, I shouldn't read this out, Mayo are a joke of a county, always chokers.
But they're not a joke of a county.
They're the opposite. Like, they come back year after year after year after year. They should be the undead. And in fairness, that takes far more work than it does to be luxuriating in glory or leaning back on your one All Ireland every 3 years like you guys do. Mm-hmm. Like, it's pretty easy to get everybody to go up and go, sure, there's an All Ireland for you. All you got to do is play 5-6 years, you'll win one. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, that's easy. Like, of course, that's so easy, isn't it?
Whereas with these lads, it's like, I offer you nothing but blood, sweat, toil and tears, and perhaps eventual defeat again and again and again and again. We might score 2 own goals in an All Ireland final, lads, and we might lose.
Yeah.
We might not lose, but we'll lose the replay.
Because the only county who's gone through hardship, of course, is Mayo.
Well, they're the only county who's gone through that level of hardship for so long.
The only county who would have been like a meaningful Ireland that isn't an easy one would be Mayo, of course. That's your point here. You're like indirecting every other county in Ireland this morning, being like, you're one in every 3 years All Ireland and all that. But look, I mean, that's just the forces that everybody else has to deal with. I do think.
Wow, what was the bitterness there?
I'm kind of only joking, to be honest, but like
you hate Mayo. It's mad how you hate Mayo and they're like punching down. You just punch down at them all the time.
I'm not punching down at Mayo whatsoever. I love Mayo.
I mean, you don't. Super Veach says Tommy rocking that Tullerone style. Very nice top. Felipe's top also very nice.
Didn't actually spot it.
Better than us. The fashion on the clips we're playing and the people we're talking to is of a higher calibre than ours this morning.
Well, that's always the way. I don't think it'll take much for that.
Richard says it's an exciting time to be a Wexford hurling fan. I can only imagine how, like, county goes completely crazy when Davy Fitz is there. There's the Leinster title. Gorey is absolutely rammed full of people, and then it all disappears. You think, oh, it's gone again. Just because that's the way it has been. It's been like a little oasis, and then it goes, and then it's a little oasis, and then it goes, and those in between the oases are famine. But like, it looks like they're back, right?
Yeah, like we want to jump to those conclusions in a positive sense, but also at the same time say that Limerick have gone nowhere as a result of early defeat. So I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, and I think I'd be keen to see how Wexford go this summer. The last full year of the Leinster Championship was fascinating, and I'm looking forward to that again this year. Like 4 teams, and one of those 4 generally going to be in a state of jeopardy in terms of getting knocked out early on. So I think the fact that Dublin and Wexford are going so strong bodes really well, because the other 2 will always be good and will always be not always, but they will probably be 2 of the favourites to progress from that Leinster group this year. So I think Munster, everybody knows it's been so good. I think the Leinster thing in 2019 in particular was excellent.
John S says, lads, having Tommy back on the show is a sign that nature is healing. Feels that way, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Backdoors in the championships is like we've needed them.
Yeah, and I yeah.
Next, I was making the point earlier on about Mayo, that All Ireland they reached when Dublin won it they beat Tipperary in an All Ireland semi-final, and Tipperary Division 4 team, as we've seen. There was a great momentary flowering, but like Cork needed a fluky win against Kerry, Tip needed a win against Cork, and ultimately that was great in a giant killing sense, but the whole point of the back door is that the best teams need to be in All Ireland semi-finals and finals.
It's true, Mayo did beat Tipperary in an All Ireland semi-final before COVID as well, and that year of 2016 when Tipperary went on that great run and beat Galway in an All Ireland quarter-final. So it does happen, but the thing is, I guess that upset is kind of, there's a journey to that as well. Like Tipperary weren't Munster champions in 16, they did manage to come through the back door, and they did manage to take out Galway in Croke Park in an All Ireland quarter-final. So that story had like a lot of backing to it, and that felt like a bit of a fairy tale. But it did just cheapened the whole thing in 2020 for sure.
Yeah. Kerry ruined it, basically. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to get to your football comments in just a couple of moments, and we're going to talk football with Phil next.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Lots of drama to look back on.
I think now is the opportunity in Croke Park to show the talent and you know, get talking about the players and their skill set.
Yeah, it was Hollywood script stuff.
The Club Championship Show. Subscribe to the GAA podcast feed on the OTB Sports app now.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliating bar.
Jimmy Hyland could become that marquee inside man for Kildare. He looks like he's threatening it, James. What do you like about this guy?
I like that. The fact that he has the potential to be the main man. And I think he wants that. And I think he'll thrive under that kind of responsibility. And he'll take that off Flynn a bit. If they can share that responsibility and have Woodgate chipping in, I think they have a very strong threesome there. But Paddy kind of nailed it for me. He's very smart. He takes the mark at the right time. His movement is good. He takes his time. He chips his free. I just think he's just all there in the head. And he doesn't get too flustered or he's not doing stupid shots. He's just a smart player. But one thing that I noticed about him is that he can snap over a shot with no room whatsoever. Like if he gets to left or right, once it's in his hand, he can just snap it over, which is a great attribute, but it also gives you kind of more options. Because if you're marking, I think we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago on the pod, that if you are corner forward and your defender knows that you have that snapshot, he's going to be down on your boot. He's going to be saying, I'm not letting this fella get the shot off. He's going to be down on you. And if he can work a dummy or some sort of a drawback to get in for a couple of goal chances, I think it would add to his game no end.
Is it a rare quality, that snapshot? Like, do you see the many footballers around at the minute?
I have an example of someone who reminds me of Conor Mortimer from back in the glory days. I played with Mort at DCU and would have played, obviously. Yeah. He was kind of coming on the scene with Dublin and he was still with Mayo. Mort was never a brilliant goal scorer. He was never a guy that would burn two or three fellas, but he was a smart forward. And if he got half a sniff, he'd kick scores. I think he got a sole All-Star 2006, I think. Mayo got to the All-Ireland final, and he was a big player for DCU in terms of winning the Sigerson Cup and things like that. But he was a guy who just knew what he was brilliant at, and he nailed that.
Right, they're the comparisons that James O'Donoghue and Paddy Andrews are making alongside Tommy Rooney, talking about Jimmy Hyland there on episode 6 of the Football Pod. The buzz is definitely back around Kildare football. We're doing our best. I'm doing my best to suppress it, just because it's the hope that kills you.
Why? Why not enjoy yourself?
Well, I definitely. That's
what you'd be saying to anybody else.
That was Sunday. Well, it's just because it's like it's hard. You know, ultimately, all life ends in heartbreak.
Like, I mean, you didn't go 2-footed in on Wales after we smashed them in the Six Nations this year. You're not rubbing it in Dublin people's faces, despite the fact that there's a Dublin studio right now this year after Kildare's. Why aren't you being a dick about this? I mean, that would be true to form. Well,
because the square ball goal that we got taken away against us there was one scored against us when Down reached the Ireland final in 2010, and then Donegal, we had one where we scored, comes back off the upright and they give a square ball and you're like, what? So somehow the fates will conspire to thwart us at the moment where it looks like we're about to seize the ultimate glory. Something will happen.
What about celebrating 2 valuable National League points?
Oh, we did. You could see the celebrations on the pitch.
You did. Like,
I absolutely did in private. And the very unofficial Kildare Supporters Club yesterday put us on a graphic. Did you see that?
I saw that actually, yeah.
in our Newbridge or Nowhere jerseys.
I'm an honorary fan.
Oh, there you go. No, I mean it's brilliant to have players who are endlessly exciting and at a stage of their careers where you don't know what the ceiling is. So good to hear the lads talking about that. Another brilliant episode of the Football Pod. Thought it couldn't get any better after last year, but James Dunning obviously just brings something completely different to the whole thing. Right, let's move on. Phil Egan, good morning to you.
How are you doing,
I can't believe your Gaelic football team is so shit.
Yeah, I mean,
how am I doing? Is that the right?
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Keep it going.
I was kind of sitting here thinking, I mean, would you be celebrating a win over the Dubs? Because everyone's beating the Dubs these days.
Oh,
it's true.
6 in a row.
It's like celebrating beating Liverpool last season.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at some of the teams, like even Everton.
Shouldn't you do it every time you get the opportunity to, because it might not come around again? Isn't that the other side of this?
Possibly. Well, yeah, the example there is Everton won at Anfield last season, and who knows when they'll win there again.
They thought that was a new normal.
Yeah, but there was no one there to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if we'd... Like, isn't it better that those couple of years that we had to watch the boring football that Jack O'Connor provided for us at Kildare instead of the good stuff that we have now, that the crowds are all able to get there and see it?
Yeah, exactly. So as I said about Liverpool last season, if you were going to have a season that was a bad one, which they still somehow rescued with a third place finish, but that was the time to do it when there was no fans there. They got their act together actually as the fans started to come back. Remember the last day of the season when they beat Palace to secure a top 4 finish, that they actually had 10,000 at Anfield. So don't waste your bad football on the fans. Waste it on the empty stadiums.
Yeah, a good idea. Before we get into Burnley, Leicester and the Premier League, we should talk about Crystal Palace last night in the Cup. Their young left back was an Irish kid, Teo Adaramola, who I think hasn't played that much yet for the first team. But it's a big enough game at this stage of the competition to be getting in. He's
it was his first start.
Played 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And you were not festooned with left backs. I mean, maybe we're playing a right back out of position at left back, but maybe now we have a left back who probably isn't going to play that much in the Premier League for the rest of the season, but certainly is being trusted in big moments.
Yeah, it always excites Irish football fans when they see a young Irish player being thrown into the first team. And people say it's the FA Cup, but Crystal Palace are one of those sides where give it a shot because they're safe in the Premier League. I know Southampton and West Ham are playing tonight. They're two other clubs that you would think you have a fair crack. Maybe West Ham, like I know they probably have their eyes on the top 4 race as well, and they're still in the Europa League, but certainly a team like Southampton who are in good form would be targeting FA Cup success, and I would put Crystal Palace in the same bracket. So for Vieira to throw him in there, that can only be a good thing. And the fact that he got over an hour, and Crystal Palace is Sellers Park is one of those stadiums that on its night can be absolutely hopping, like, so great experience for him. And hopefully the sign of things to come.
The Ireland squad, it's going to be interesting to see who he names. Like, I don't know if any of the players who are in that age group at the moment are close to the Ireland squad for what's going to be a very important campaign from Stephen Kenny's perspective. Or do you bring them in and show them around and say, this is going to be you this time next year or the year after, if you get your head down and get a few games? I don't know. What's the way to manage that throughput of players?
Well, I think like somebody like Daramola, who's he's still a teenager, like his next step is a call up to the 21s. But yeah, there's players in the 21 squad that Stephen Kenny will have definitely earmarked for call ups to the senior squad, whether they're ready. Sometimes you see managers call up players just to train. I know Jack Byrne was on the show yesterday speaking to Nathan, and he's still only 25. But you think back to when Martin O'Neill was in charge. I remember Jack Byrne was called in to train with the senior squad. I think it was him and Callum O'Dowda, because I remember Jack Byrne came into the press conference, this young lad who was on loan over in Holland but was on the books at Manchester City and was taking it all in a stride. But just to get a look at them and what they're like against the senior players. Well,
we played a clip of Cian Prendergast earlier on, who'd been called up to train with the Ireland rugby squad, and he said his brain was fried for the first few days, just kind of, these are some of the best players in the world. Like, getting that out of the system as early as possible, so that when an injury, it forces us to pick one of these players and play a game, because that frequently happens, where it's like you come from nowhere, you play a game, and maybe you stick in the squad or maybe you don't afterwards. removing as much of the brain fry as possible would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, as well, like if you're Stephen Kenny, you want to see how they adapt to the environment, and I'd say it's almost a case of you look at their behaviour as well. Not only what they do on the pitch, but off the pitch. You know, do they interact with their teammates? What are they like? Can they handle it? Is it too much for them, or do they take it all on their stride? Just you get to know about personalities, and knowing then if it comes to a big game that you can say, yeah, I'm throwing you straight in. I think you're ready for it. I think you can handle it. You've got the temperament for it.
Yeah, the other thing that came out in that Nathan interview with Jack Byrne was the text from Stephen Kenny. You know, and not the fact that he did it, but the fact that it had such an impact. Like Jack Byrne said, I can't explain the impact it had on me, but it really did have an impact. And that is the managerial, man management skills that we've heard people talk about that are intangible with Kenny. The players who've played with him, who got on with him over a long period of time, it seems would go to war for him pretty quickly. And I should really stop using language like that about sport because it doesn't matter anymore. But anyway, like that man management skill that he has is something that has clearly come across. And you know, I'm sure he's in contact with all these players who are making their debuts. And the other thing that was announced was record season ticket sales.
Yeah.
For the Republic of Ireland. I don't know how long we've been keeping track of this, but it's very interesting. It's like the home slate of games this year is not great, is it?
No, well, obviously you've got the Belgium game later on this month, but there is something, I think we've seen it with the start of the new League of Ireland season as well. There is some sort of there's a buzz about Irish football where it's maybe the fact that there's new people in the FAI, so it gives hope, but also, like, look, there's always been a massive interest in football in this country, and I think now if it feels like there could be a change, whether the League of Ireland gets the investment that it needs and deserves, then that can kick on. And obviously there's an excitement about the international team because there's a lot of young players that have now been capped, and that only bodes well for the future. And the Nations League is obviously something that Stephen Kenny has targeted and then wants to bring it on into the European campaigns. So there is a real excitement about it, and you could see even when the crowds came back for the last few games, just this team the fans are behind this team and behind Stephen Kenny.
Yeah, and look, the players coming through at that age group, those kind of 17 to 21-year-olds, they're very promising. It's just, it feels like it might be a bit too early for them. Or maybe it's not. Maybe this is the campaign where they all smash their way to prominence at international level, and you know, there's a good time coming. But it's hard because we don't want to put too much pressure on them, and yet we also really desperately need them to deliver quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to what I said earlier, even about like the whole strange situation of the start of Stephen Kenny's tenure, where there was nobody there, and players were getting ruled out of games left, right and centre because of COVID, and just pretty much anything that could go wrong was going wrong. And towards the end of the World Cup qualifiers, it looked like we turned that corner where we were starting to score goals, we were playing some nice football, the crowds were back, there was a buzz, and yeah, that was kind of what Stephen Kenny was aiming for, was just to blood all these players, and then obviously he would have liked to have got some more positive results in the campaign, but he always said it was about being stronger for the European Championship qualifiers. So that's where we're at, but it looks like we're on an upward curve, and it's probably no surprise then that all these people want season tickets.
Will we go back to the Premier League?
Yeah, you were watching Burnley last night?
Yeah, actually, speaking of Irish players, Nathan Collins actually came on in the game because Ben Mee went off injured fairly. Looked innocuous at the time. He just came in for a sliding tackle to dispossess Patson Daka, but soldiered on for about 10 minutes, even went up for a corner, and then he couldn't get back, and it's like, right, you're on, Nathan Collins. And Collins did okay. Burnley were doing what Burnley do. They were blocking shots, and you know, I thought they would have success with set pieces given how bad Leicester have been. They've conceded from 18 set pieces this season, but they probably just didn't get enough corners, Burnley. And then Brendan Rodgers has the luxury in the 72nd minute of being able to say to James Maddison and Jamie Vardy, on you go. Interesting enough, Tielemans came off, and another game where he wasn't great, and obviously a lot of talk about where he's going to be next season, and maybe that's what we're seeing with him, that the head is thinking elsewhere.
I've heard you make the case that he might be a Virgil van Dijk, where it's grand, he's so good that he'll be able to bounce back straight away.
Yeah, because that was something, like, you know, people say if this is the way he is because he wants to get a move away, you know, people would question the character of a player. But that was said about Van Dijk, where he tried to he got his move away from Celtic, then he wanted to get his move away from Southampton. And some people said, well, you know, what's going to happen when he's unhappy at Liverpool? Or he might think he wants to move away. And I mean, none of that has happened. He's obviously been sensational, and nobody ever talks about Van Dijk leaving Liverpool.
Is Tielemans that good?
He's not going to be a game changer for a club the way Van Dijk has been for Liverpool, but he certainly is a very good player. He's technically very good, has a goal in him, and will complement plenty of the top teams in the Premier League. Who knows, maybe he has his eye on a move outside the Premier League. I'm sure there'll be plenty of teams in Europe that would be quite happy to have him in their midfield. In terms of what it did for the relegation scrap, you were kind of thinking with 20 minutes to go, Everton are going to be they were in the bottom three in the as things stand table until Maddison scored and then Vardy scored. But there's some big games this weekend. Obviously, Tottenham are coming off the disappointment of last night. They play Everton next Monday. So Everton will know going into that game where they are. Obviously, Leeds, first game for Jesse Marsh, is away to Leicester. And maybe it's a bad time from there because it looks like Vardy's going to be... You'd imagine Brendan Rodgers will put him straight back in. Maddison has been excellent. I'm not sure why he didn't start him. Maybe he was carrying a knock, but he scored 2 great goals in the Conference League last week for Leicester. So Leicester needed that win. That was their first win of 2022 in the league. So, you know, top half finish, maybe win the Europa Conference League. There's still a few teams in there, though, that will give them problems because they haven't been great in Europe. In terms of Burnley, they look like the only team in the bottom 3 that can get out. And
last night's a bit of a disaster for that, though, isn't it? They're the games that, so they put in really good performances against Chelsea, unlucky against Liverpool, good against Man United, games where they're not supposed to pick up points, but against Leicester, who are not in free fall, but are having a down season, you think, okay, this is it, go and win this.
Yeah, and I did feel that Burnley would have enough to get a point out of it where they could just... that was Leicester's first clean sheet away from home in the league this season as well. So Burnley, you mentioned Chelsea there. They obviously drew at Stamford Bridge. They actually play Chelsea at Turf Moor on Saturday afternoon. So another game to watch as well this weekend in terms of the fight for survival is you've got Norwich and Brentford.
Brentford Leeds is who Burnley are eyeing up, not Everton.
Yeah. Now, saying that though, Christian Eriksen came off the bench last week in the defeat to Newcastle and showed glimpses. There was a lovely ball where he played first time, and you wonder, could he be the player that just gives Brentford that bit of a spark that gets them going again? Because it looked like they'd be okay. I didn't pick them to go down at the start of the season. I just thought they're a bit of an unknown quantity, a bit like Sheffield United were when they came up, and they have a certain way of playing. They'd be quite tough to beat in their own patch, and that's the way it started. But teams maybe have worked them out a bit. Also, just as the season goes on, you start picking up injuries, and it just becomes a bit of a slog. And the more games you lose, obviously the confidence is taking a bit of a hit. So maybe Eriksen could be the player to turn it around for them. Hard to know what is going to happen with Leeds. They've 12 games to save it. In terms of getting rid of Bielsa, they've got rid of him at the end of the tough run of games where I kind of wondered if you could see out the Spurs game, then you were going into games where you think, right, they can actually start winning a few of these. But obviously Leeds decided enough is enough, and now it's a time for Jesse Marsh. How do you get out of a Marcelo Bielsa thinking team with 12 games to go? The only positive for Leeds fans is Jesse Marsh would, the players that they have will suit the way that he wants to play, but he'll have to tweak things. This whole man-for-man thing, that's gone.
Leeds played Brentford on the final day of the season.
Yeah.
My money's on that being possibly a relegation off.
Could be. I know Burnley play Newcastle as well in the last
Newcastle
day.
will definitely be
I think
safe.
Newcastle will be all right.
And I would definitely have Burnley ahead of Brentford and Leeds on current form.
Yeah.
Maybe on paper, if Leeds get their full team back, but they won't have their full team back by the end of the season, it changes things.
Yeah, I mean, there's very little talk about Bamford or Phillips. So you wonder, are they going to play again this season?
That's it.
Bamford, I don't know. I mean, maybe Jesse Marsh will be a bit more upfront, but then again, Bielsa's usually he's quite honest when he's asked questions. He'd no problem telling you. But you wouldn't worry about Everton, no?
Not with the quality that they have, I think anyway, and I think that they have got a win in the last couple of weeks. I think just a win for what that does for a relegation threatened team is just like a rocket fuel. And of course, they've had a disappointing result since then, and they looked better against Manchester City, which is definitely something they'll cling to. But Brentford and Leeds just can't get a win at the moment.
No.
Like, they just can't get 3 points on the board, and that's if you just get one of them, then away you go. But it's just hard to see how the two of them win games at the moment. So I'd be very worried. I think Everton and Newcastle are just a cut above that crew at the moment, and then it's a 3-horse race, I think, for that one spot.
Absolutely.
I think Burnley are better than the other two.
Yeah, I think Norwich are done, even though Norwich are obviously playing Liverpool tonight in the FA Cup, and Dean Smith has pretty much said all eyes are on this weekend, which goes back to what I was saying about certain clubs just can't have a proper crack at the FA Cup. They don't feel they can, because look, we saw it even last night with Spurs. Spurs put out their strong 11, but they couldn't back up the performance from the other day. So that seems to be an issue under Conte, where they can't put in decent back-to-back performances. So does that is that to do with the intensity he wants them to play with?
What do you think? What's your theory? Like, there is a possibility that it's to do with conditioning for what he wants to do and what his style of play is. What it really is I never understand how at this point, when the science is so good, that conditioning is better for one team than another.
Yeah, I don't like. You can be as well conditioned as you want, but if you're playing 2 games at high intensity in a week, obviously the second game is going to take its toll a bit more. And when he won the league with Chelsea, one thing he had in his favour was he had no European football that season, because they'd been so bad the season before with Mourinho, and obviously Hiddink had come in as well. Like, so it appears that would be one of the concerns. Also, as well, you factor in that, Spurs, we've known for years that nothing surprises you with Spurs anymore. The fact that they could follow up a great win over Man City with a defeat at Burnley. But the encouraging thing is they're creating chances in those games.
Yeah.
So they've 6 days to recover for that game against Everton on Monday night.
Yeah, and it's not a bad fixture to get right.
No, and I just wondered with Everton, I wouldn't worry about them going down, but I just wondered what it would be like psychologically to drop into the bottom 3 at this stage of the season.
Let's see. Hopefully we'll get a chance to see.
If Burnley need to get a draw or better against Chelsea on Saturday for that to happen, I can't see that happening.
All right, we've got to go. Phil, good stuff. Great to have you back. Thanks a million. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. For more from Phil, check out our lunchtime wrap. It'll drop around midday today on our podcast feed with any breaking news. John Duggan's OTB Brief has been there for you since 6:30 AM with all of this morning's latest news and headlines from the papers. If you want your OTB audio fix, subscribe to that feed and you'll get it there, and highlights as well. Tomorrow morning, as always, we're live from 7:30. We're bringing you the inside the new season of Drive to Survive. There's the hurling power rankings, football, and much more as well. If you've missed anything, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and once you hit subscribe, we'll let you know whenever we're live. You can also get it on our podcast feeds. We cut it up into different segments for you, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing. But if you want to listen to the whole thing, you can subscribe to the OTB AM feed with Tommy Walsh in the OTB GAA stream, and you'll find Football with Nathan and Phil this morning in OTB Football. Right now, here's Joe Malloy talking with Eric Donovan from last night's Off the Ball.
Action in Glasgow over the weekend. It was a third round stoppage against the very brilliant Robisi Ramirez, 28 years of age, a gold medalist in London and in Rio, and is now making his way in the pro game. So disappointment, I'm sure. Eric, you're very welcome. Great to have you with us.
Good evening, Joe. Thank you.
Just for anyone listening, you can see you've been in the wars a bit. That's a big old black eye. How are you feeling generally?
Naturally down, naturally hurt. Gutted that I couldn't come away with a better result. But overall, physically I'm okay. I know I don't look okay, but I am. Physically I'm good. Black eye to show the marks, and the 6 stitches as well over the eye. Two Actually, there were two previous cuts that were just probably a half an inch between both, and but they were from previous fights, and he just opened them up with a short little uppercut, and both I was unlucky, very unfortunate in the second round that two previous cuts open up straight away, so the task was hard enough as it was without having the blood trickling into the eye and then just completely taking away 50% of my vision. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And is that generally, from a boxer's point of view, is that the only issue with the cut? Like, if you get a cut on your cheekbone, is that a cause of concern or worry during a fight for any reason?
Yeah, it really depends on the location of the cut. If you get one right down on maybe say the very, very edge of your eye, maybe the very edge of your eyebrow, there's a very good chance that the blood will follow your facial features, the design in your face, and just kind of avoid your eye, just kind of go by it and maybe down along your cheekbone, and that's pretty good. But where mine was, it came straight over the eyebrow and into the eye, and it just made the task even more difficult from the second round on.
Yes, that was his uppercut in the second, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't even a big punch, but it was just I wouldn't mind. It was something we looked at as well. It's a signature punch that he throws too, but he kind of disguises the punch very well. He shapes up like he's just going to throw straight, and then he whips it up underneath, and I almost kind of crunched down onto the punch almost, and it just hit me at the perfect angle, like to just open up the two cuts, and the punch wasn't in any way effective in terms of. It wasn't hurtful. It didn't stun me, anything. But as soon as it hit, I felt the blood trickling down straight away, and I was kind of like, damn,
Yeah. A fighter in advance is never going to reveal if camp was good, bad, or indifferent. They always say it was a great camp, because why are you going to broadcast any kind of weakness to your opponent? How was your camp?
Yeah, no, absolutely no problems at the camp at all. Like, I really pushed hard, I was in training camp anyway from just before Christmas. No, I wasn't kind of, let's say, it wasn't a kind of a training camp for an opponent of this kind of magnitude. It was one for, I was in training camp for a fight that I had planned at the end of January in Belfast. And we didn't even have an opponent yet, but, we weren't thinking of anybody along the lines of Robici Ramirez, But anyway, when that show got pulled, I kind of enjoyed Christmas a little bit much then. I was like, sure, that show's off now. And Mark, my manager, Mark Dunlop, said we're not going to be able to get availability in the venue in February or March either. So it's going to could be a while before we're back in the ring. So I was kind of like, okay, let's have you a Christmas, and I was enjoying myself with food, and as you do at Christmas, and put up a few pounds all right. But then 7 weeks out, 7-8 weeks out, when I got the confirmation that, hey, we have a possibility of fighting Robici Ramirez the end of February, what do you think? What do you want to do? And I was already, I was training, but I was a little bit heavy, but that's probably the only thing.
Yeah.
I was a little bit heavy, so I took off a good bit of weight. But in saying that, a lot of people, everybody in my camp, people said I never looked as healthy on the weight. I did feel really strong, felt really good. I did take off good, but, probably close to 20 pounds, I'd say, in 7 weeks, yeah.
Right, okay, which isn't nothing either, but it's in the main it went pretty well. And so you were very familiar with Robici Ramirez. I think you'd even commentated on him, like I said, a 2-time gold medalist. So you would have known the quality you were up against. I remember speaking to you pre-fight a few weeks before it, and you certainly said you'd seen a few things, or you thought of a few things, maybe game plan wise, which might work. You didn't want to reveal them, naturally enough, on national radio and beyond ahead of the fight. What were the things, Eric, or the areas where you thought you might find some joy?
Well, one of them was to never move to my right, to move to his left. Move to my left, which is his right, because he's a southpaw. He's like a mirror image of myself. and we're both southpaws, you know, leading with our right hands. And as Packy said to me, keep moving to your left, keep moving away from his left hand, you know, because he tries to set those targets, he tries to set those traps to bring you onto the left hand over the top. And another area that we looked at as well is that, you know, he drops pace as the rounds go on, almost casual a little bit, you know, if he's not kind of having things his own way, he just kind of goes through, you know, canters through the rounds. And we, you know, one thing that I have in abundance is a big engine, huge engine. So we thought, like, if we can be within the fight, you know, match him, you know, for maybe up until the halfway stage, then, you know, that we might be able to start pushing him back, because I'm 5'8", he's 5'5". You know, we might start being able to use our physicality. Another area that we kind of gained a bit of, I suppose, strength from and kind of hope from was that we didn't believe he was a fully fledged featherweight. You know, we thought he should maybe super bantam. You know, for 5'5", he's quite small, and he looked a bit chubby as well around the waist and stuff. You know, so he's not very lean, but you know, I found that out the hard way in the ring in the first round on the night. He's super strong, absolutely powerful, like, and his actual size actually works into his advantage because he's so small. He's almost rooted to the canvas. You know, it's got that low center of gravity, and he's a real force in the ring. That when he's hitting you, he's hitting you with his whole body. His technique is incredible. He would have been earmarked, you know, from as a young child in primary school and taken out of the primary school and put into a Cuban boxing academy, which would have educated him and schooled him, and you know, that's why he went on to win, you know, become one of Cuba's most successful boxers, Olympic champion at 19 years of age, and then repeated defeat at 23 years of age. You know, he's genetically, like, he's phenomenal. You know, he's only 5'5". Zelfa Barrett's 5'9" or 10, but he's the same length arms as Zelfa Barrett. You know,
yeah.
He's got the same length arms. He's just an incredible.
He's built for it.
Athlete.
He's built for it. So those initial seconds and maybe minute or two in the ring where you're getting a sense for what he's really like, that must jump out to you. This must be crossing your mind. My God, this guy's got a power here. Maybe I knew he'd be strong, but you hadn't fully appreciated that. They're kind of worrying realizations, I would think.
Yeah, look, I'm smart enough, intelligent enough to know good boxing. Like, you don't become a double Olympic champion for nothing. You know, went into this fight with my eyes wide open. I knew it was going to be a mammoth task, but I never once thought it would be impossible. You know, if I thought it would be impossible, I wouldn't have took the fight. You know, they're the kind of things we tell ourselves. You know, any athlete, especially in an individual sport, you know, you got to have that self-belief, that self-confidence, and you got to try and find that strength, that belief, that hope from somewhere. And you know, my preparation and my training, like, you know, I said, like, if I can put everything I have into this, just maybe, I might be able to pull it off. And you hold on to that. But if I don't pull it off, maybe I could go the distance with him. And wouldn't that be a great moral victory to say you got in with a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and you gave him a good run for his money?
Yeah.
Like, that's the way I was thinking, you know, and never in a million years did I think it was going to be over as quickly as it was. Sad in a way, because I found the first round, like, I was just trying to, like, as Packy said to me, Packy was great tactics, great advice. He was like, just warm yourself into this, Eric, have a look at him, nothing silly, you don't need to do anything crazy, silly, just warm yourself into this fight, you know, keep moving to your left, stay away from his left hand. And we did, you know, as best we could, but then I kind of lost my balance in the first round, and he kind of advanced at me, and he kind of threw a punch. It was a shoulder punch or whatever. It caught me. Anyway, I got caught on my heels and I fell over. But a punch kind of landed there too, not on the head, kind of on the body, and he kind of helped me on my way. But I kind of got a count for that, but it was more embarrassing than anything else.
Yeah, even on commentary, to be fair, they said straight away, look, that's not a proper knockdown. He's just caught him off balance. I guess where anyone watching, because it was on Sky Showcase and a lot of people would have seen it, the uppercut certainly in the second round, which we mentioned, which is the cut, and then it was a third round stoppage. Certainly on commentary, they were saying that he seemed to be that touch sharper, and with the jab you were finding it pretty tricky at times to stay out of harm's way. I guess that ties in with the reach that you're talking about and just the talent and the timing and the speed that he has. It was obviously difficult for you to keep moving all the time out of harm's way.
Yeah, like in terms of energy and fitness and conditioning and all that, like I was absolutely fantastic, as best as I've ever been. Like, so I was never really tired. I suppose, if anything, he was more settled from the opening bell than I was. He just jumped into his stride and he found his distance, found his comfort zone, and he had me thinking. He had me on edge. That's what he did. And I suppose his presence as well, even though he was very small, he seemed to have a far better presence in the ring than me. Ring generalship. He seemed to be able to kind of control things and
sorry to interrupt, actually, because and do pick up on that other point. I'm recycling a touch what the commentary team were saying, but when you talk there about his control of the ring, they were saying, like, you're a real technician, as we know, and you were trying to give him angles he didn't want. He seemed to have an ability to cut you off from doing that and get you pretty quickly back into the angles he wanted.
Absolutely, yeah. He's just very advanced in his thinking, in his technique and everything. Just like, I knew I was in against someone very special, Joe. Very good, very early on, and I knew I was going to have my work cut out. But never did I feel overawed. I never felt like, oh my God, this is like, I just said, okay, right. I understood that this is quite difficult now, but I need to try and resolve this. I need to try and find my way into this fight. And then after the second round, after the embarrassing knockdown in the first, we kind of just had to compartmentalize. Don't mind that, Packy said. Look, just get back in. Just keep moving to your left. Keep working that jab. Keep him at the end of your jab. Don't allow him in, and warm yourself into this fight. And then in the second round, even though I did get cut, I felt a little bit better about myself. And I felt like I was starting to feel him and feel his punches and blocking some of his shots. Yeah, he was throwing a couple of jabs and getting them in there, but there was no real power or no effect on them. So when I got to the end of the second round, albeit kind of thrown by the cut, but I was happier in myself, much happier than I was after the first. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm going in the right direction here, Now, we always thought that with the second half of the fight is where we would maybe start to get a bit of success in the fight, that we might be able to start pushing them back. But obviously went out in the third round and the blood started trickling again. I stepped forward, I pushed him back. I thought, this is good. I stepped forward, hit him a right uppercut a hook to the body and a hook up the middle, straight up between his defence, and landed both of the shots. But I don't think the headshot had really much of an effect on him. But what it done was the opposite of what I hoped it would do. It woke him up. And it woke him up instead of putting him back. But anyway, then he just really advanced at me again. And of course, his balance seemed to be, the way he moved was a very formidable, kind of a strong force, a strong presence in the ring. It's like his feet are stuck to the ground, rooted to the ground very strongly. I was kind of a little bit imbalanced, kind of a bit shaky, jerky on my toes, and I went back on my heels. Kind of, again, wasn't really balanced when he advanced forward, and I turned my right shoulder to him, and it was my right eye that I couldn't see through. So I almost braced myself. I turned my right shoulder, had my both hands covering my face, and he threw a left hook that hit me behind the ear. So it's almost like between the back of your head and the side of your head, right there, and it just really scrambled my brains. It was really a powerful punch. One of the heaviest punches I've ever been hit with.
Right.
And I know Zalfa Barrett hit me with a big punch, but that kind of took my feet out from under me and left me on the canvas. That was more like instant and boom, you're on the ground. But this one here almost had that ricocheting effect, that it was going on and on, like boom, 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 boom in my head. You know, it was really serious punch. And then, of course, your instinct is to, you know, you're a fighter, you want to fight, you know, and referee made a good call.
I think he did, yeah. You could see you were a bit shaken, and geez, the way you've described it there, that does not sound pleasant.
No.
At 36, this was your 16th fight. Where does that leave you? Where does that leave your future and your appetite to keep going?
Oh, yeah, I knew this question was going to come. Look, I mean, when I started out on this journey of professional boxing, I was 3 years in retirement, and I really wasn't doing much in terms of, but I kept up a bit of fitness and stuff like that, but I wasn't really competing or doing anything. A few sparring sessions here and there, and that was about it. But you know, I started off and I set myself a goal of an Irish title. I said, wouldn't it be wonderful? You know, I won that Irish title, Celtic title. You know, I got there. And then I said, maybe I could push towards a European, you know, and unfortunately the European title never came around. There was one stage where I was supposed to box for the EU title, and I picked up an injury, so it never actually materialised. But I got 2 offers to step up to world level, one against Zalfa Barrett and one against Robeisy Ramirez. You know, I came very close to pulling it off against Barrett.
Yeah.
And I didn't really get close at all against Robeisy Ramirez. But ultimately, I came up short on both of them, you know. So world level is obviously, you know, at 36, it's just a bridge too far, step too far, and probably turn professional too late in my life to actually really be serious about challenging for world honours. So I don't think I'd go back to that level, you know. I don't think I'd go back even if anybody offers me, you know, whatever, a chance, a shot. I can't probably... I don't think so, but if there is an opportunity at European, maybe I'll consider it. But I am very much well aware that I'm in the final chapters of my career. You know, I'm very happy as well. I'm very proud of everything I've achieved. I'm not done. I'm going away at the weekend with my wife Laura. We're going to Rome, and we're really looking forward to just a nice little breakaway. And when I come back, I'll have a chat with Mark Dunlop, my manager, and I'll talk with Laura and my family and my sponsorship team as well. Do you know something, Joe? When I got the call to step up to world level, like, you know, and fight Barrett and fight Robeisy Ramirez. Now, you have to understand that I'm being brought in to lose.
I know,
you know?
Yeah.
They're not bringing me in there to win.
No, you're cannon fodder.
Yeah, I'm the B side. I'm brought in for these guys, professional A side guys who are on the cusp of world championship titles, to showcase their skills in front of everybody. And I'm aware that I'm not, you know, I'm under no illusion. You know what I mean? Like that things are in my favour. They're not. But that's when I say, right, a challenge accepted, you know. But for me to do that, I needed a lot of backing, you know. I had to talk to sponsors. I had to talk to my coach, Packy, Mark, my family, because I'm a self-employed person. I had to take time off work to try and do this, and I needed people to believe in me and back me. So I just want to very quickly, just if you don't mind, just want to mention my sponsorship team who really got behind me and allowed me to chase my dreams. So, bear in point, okay, they've been a great support. The Owl Shabeen Attai, A&A Pharmacy Attai, Liffey Crane Hire, Novo Technologies, Smart Techs, Vicky McGinn Physiotherapy in Drogheda, and Sean Kilroy Fitness in Drogheda. They've got behind me and let me chase my dreams for the last 8 weeks, and made sure that everything was okay, that I didn't have to worry about too much. All I had to do was focus on my training and resting and be in the best possible shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, every way. And I can't thank them enough, because I don't know, like as I said, I don't know if I will fight again. I really don't know. I'm not saying I'm retiring or anything like that, because I don't know what else is out there for me. if there's a European shot, I will definitely consider it. But if not, I think I would be happy with everything I have achieved. And walking out in front of 15,000 fans the other night, you know, was a dream come true.
Yeah,
I would have set up.
It looked amazing. Looked great.
It was absolutely incredible. And I would have sat at home a few years ago when I would have been dealing with my own demons, my own inner demons, and the crutches that I was using to get through life at times, at very difficult times in my life. And I would have sat down and looked at big fights in Vegas, big fights in New York, and I would have been like thinking, oh God, I'd love to be there. I wonder what that would be like, you know, or I could have done that, you know. In the back of my mind, I was saying, maybe I could have done that. But do you know what? I've done that now. I actually done it, and it didn't get the result that I wanted, but I actually done it.
No,
and actually,
sure.
I'm only after thinking of one thing while I was talking there as well. A huge shout out to Blackstone Motors. They, I signed a brand ambassador 1 year sponsorship with them this year, and they gave me a car for the year to drive. So I want to thank them as well for their support. Sorry, I forgot them. Yeah.
No, you're good. You're good. Listen, and we've talked to you before about what an amazing thing it has been for you to get to this level and the hurdles that you overcome. And listen, you had a go. Like how many of us in life don't have a go? So you have a lot to be very, very proud of. And we'll talk to you again, I'm sure, obviously, whatever you decide. And I think you're right to take some time and see what's out there, European level or otherwise. So Eric Donovan, rest up. I hope you enjoy Rome. And like I said, everybody really rooting for you and very proud of what you have done. So thanks a mil, Eric.
Pleasure. Thank you, Joe.
All right.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs razor with exfoliation.